Chapter 1893. The Cloud Sky Great Ancestor unleashed the will of the sky and cast the sky divine body. His huge face glared angrily. He recognized one of the two figures. It was the number one alchemist in the northern frontier, Divine Emperor Jiang. As for the other old man, he didn't know who he was. However, as soon as they arrived, they destroyed the city above clouds and the Cloud Sky Palace. This beautiful fairy-like city was the masterpiece of the Cloud Sky clan's generations of painstaking effort. The sweat of their ancestors was poured into it, and it could be said to be one of the most beautiful places in the East Continent. He did not expect that it would be destroyed in front of the Cloud Sky Great Ancestor. Why? He shouted loudly, demanding an answer. He had no grudges with Divine Emperor Jiang and did not know the old man. However, he destroyed the Cloud Sky clan's foundation for no reason. How could he face the spirits of his ancestors? Kill! Li Xiuxing was not here to talk nonsense. He was here to kill. Dazzling imperial light bloomed on the Cloud Sky Great Ancestor's body. The clan's supreme imperial technique, the yellow art of expansion, was activated. Waves of earth-shattering rumbles erupted as it reached the limit of the 10th level. At this time, the monstrous black and yellow chi swept out and seemed to have sealed the sky. Li Xiuxing's divine true self-perfected will of Wei merged with a wisp of flawless aura into the imperial technique. He blasted a palm toward the Cloud Sky Great Ancestor. The sky seemed to be about to collapse under the might of his palm. The yellow art of expansion, the 10th level, controlled the weather and controlled the body. This move was called Chaos Overturning. The Cloud Sky Great Ancestor stood in the void and cast the sky divine body. He was like a god that ruled the sky, exuding endless majesty. However, when he felt the power of Li Xiuxing's will of Wei, which enveloped the entire sky and even swallowed him, the god of the sky, he felt a strong sense of danger. His heart, which had not throbbed for a long time, was now trembling. Screams of agony rang out from the crumbling city above the clouds. Ancestor Yuntian looked over and saw a sword light shuttling back and forth between the ruins. Every time it flashed, it took the life of an emperor from the Yuntian clan. The Cloud Sky Great Ancestor knew that in addition to Divine Emperor Jiang and the old man, there was another sword master present. He wanted to destroy the Cloud Sky orthodoxy. Boom! Monstrous Emperor Aura exploded, forcing Ancestor Yuntian to the point that he had no way out. Waves of true meaning gathered on his palm and struck out at the same time. Two horrifying palm prints, one above and one below, collided midway, exploding with a world-destroying radiant power. Kacha! Being swept by the light, Patriarch Cloud Sky, who had transformed into the god of the sky, leaned back and countless cracks appeared on his body. At the same time, Li Xiuxing also suffered an extremely strong recoil. He crossed his arms in front of him to protect himself. Black and yellow chi surrounded his body. When the aftershock of the light swept over, his body trembled and blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth. Old Ancestor Yuntian's cultivation was no weaker than his. Ancestor Fox Ancestors Ancestor Fox's Ancestor Fox Ancestor Demon Ancestor Ancestors Ancestor 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 Ancestors Ancestor Ancestor An Ancestor 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 It Ancestor Ancestor Ancestensis Twoosh. The demon core of the perfected true self demon emperor carried the poison refined by old Jiang. It turned into a beam of green light and flew towards Ancestor Cloud Sky. Great Elder Yuntian raised his hand. He could sense that Holy Emperor Jiang's will of the Great Path was weaker than his own. He had the Yuntian body to protect him, so he was not afraid of the other's poison rules at all. The huge palm accurately grabbed Ancestor Fox's demon core without any hesitation. However, as soon as he grasped it, an even more terrifying aura of death swept over him. Threads of light darted through the gaps between the fingers of the giant palm. His expression suddenly changed, and his huge body quickly retreated, as if he wanted to avoid something. Too late. Explode. Saint Emperor Jiang pointed his finger forward. Dilly activated it, and the demon core immediately exploded. The demon core was the core of the demon clan's demon power. It was equivalent to the dantian of the human clan. It was the link between the emperor will and the physical strength of the body. The power of the explosion was immense. Moreover, the demon core of the true self-demon emperor was in Patriarch Cloud Sky's hands. Boom! Devastating radiant particles filled the sky, and the giant palm turned into ashes on the spot. Terrifying toxins permeated the air, covering the sky and the sun, mixing in every strand of spirit qi. Grandmaster Yun Tian's Tao body was damaged. Although he had made preparations to dodge in advance, he was still half a beat too late, and was instantly engulfed by the rampaging demonic power and poison Tao precepts. At this moment, the poison barrier covered everything, and a heavy groan came from inside. Unfortunately, there is only one. If there is another, he will definitely die, Holy Emperor Jiang said. He was puzzled. The Snow Fox clan's talent was determined by the number of tails. Ancestor Fox had 7 tails, but why did he only have 1 demon core? It seemed that the Fox clan was not perfect. If they were born with 7 demon cores, they would be very powerful. The ending will be the same, Li Xiuxing said coldly, his sharp eyes staring up. With a buzz, a layer of turbulent clouds swept across the sky like a gust of wind, sweeping away the poison barrier in the sky and slowly revealing a figure. At this moment, Ancestor Cloud Sky's clothes were tattered, and a terrible layer of poisonous light appeared on his face. His lips were purple, and the poison was attacking his heart, causing his body to tremble. The demon power contained in the demon core was too strong. It was like a perfected true self-demon emperor had crazily self-destructed, directly breaking his sky will. Now, it was also infected by Holy Emperor Jiang's poison rules. The terrible poison was paralyzing his 6 senses and interfering with his emperor will. He was at the end of his road. I, Yun Zhongyang, have always been magnanimous. I have always repaid kindness with kindness. I don't know how I have offended the 2 of you, but now, can you let me know? Ancestor Cloud Sky said. The emperor will float in his body, trying to suppress the spread of the poison. Sorry, it seems that you and I have no grudge. Holy Emperor Jiang said proudly without blushing. Ancestor Cloud Sky frowned. No grudge? But he had destroyed the foundation of the Cloud Sky clan and wanted to kill him here? Although you and I have no grudge, others have treated me well, and I have to repay them. Holy Emperor Jiang smiled. He had no choice but to owe Dendi a favor. That's a reason. What about you? Ancestor Cloud Sky looked at Li Xiuxing. Why? 600 years ago, at the East Continent's imperial banquet, you took a fruit of the way from my plate, Li Xiuxing said. Back then, at the Sunset Peak, Dendi had established the empire and invited the emperors of the 4 regions to hold a grand imperial banquet. At that time, Li Xiuxing, as a person of the southern region, was not eye-catching. Compared to the local mighty figures of the East Continent, his status was naturally lower. However, Ancestor Cloud Sky took advantage of his strong cultivation and took a fruit of the way from Li Xiuxing's bowl in front of the emperors of the 4 regions. This made Li Xiuxing extremely embarrassed. On the way back, proud god Xianyuan Wutian mocked him, saying that the people of the Li clan were as timid as mice. If it had been the Xianyuan clan, they would not have been able to take it lying down. Xianyuan Wutian would have definitely fought with great ancestor Yun Tian. After all, Xianyuan Wutian had dared to challenge Qin Hao at the imperial banquet. Although these words were unpleasant to hear, Li Xiuxing had always remembered them. After all, that was not an ordinary fruit, but an emperor fruit nurtured by a pill emperor. If he had not lost this fruit, perhaps Li Xiuxing would have been able to reach his current realm in less than 200 years. That was equivalent to Ancestor Cloud Sky losing 200 years of his life. At this moment, Ancestor Cloud Sky was shocked. His mind was spinning fast. Although he still could not remember what had happened, it was too much for the other party to destroy his orthodoxy for a mere fruit. Chapter 1894. As you said, I'll return you the fruits of the way. 10, 20, 100. If you're willing to let go of your obsession and leave, I'll agree to any request you have. Great Elder Yun Tian didn't remember this, but he did remember the imperial banquet. The luxurious imperial banquet on Sunset Peak had gathered the emperors of the 4 regions. The banquet items were all rare and precious treasures brought by the emperors of the 4 regions. He did not know which Dao fruit was on Li Xiuxing's plate. Even so, as long as the 4 regions still existed, he would do everything he could to get it. Compared to the foundation of the orthodoxy, his life was not important, so a few Dao fruits were not worth mentioning. Return. Li Xiuxing laughed coldly. Haha, you can't afford to return the carefree fruit. Carefree fruit? Hearing this, Great Elder Yun Tian's heart trembled. Yes, you can't afford to return it. The carefree fruit absorbs the will of the great path of all things. It only grows on Sunset Peak. It doesn't bloom for long, and the tree is very young. That is the only carefree tree in the world. How can you return it? Great Elder Yun Tian said. Great Elder Yun Tian fell silent. He couldn't afford to return it because the carefree tree had been destroyed. The year Denda died, the 4 divine generals of Daqin rebelled and killed their way to Sunset Peak. In the battle, they destroyed the only remaining carefree tree in the world. At this moment, Great Elder Yun Tian vaguely understood. No wonder you ascended from the alchemy path to the true self. You're here to avenge Dendi. So what if I am? You claim to be magnanimous. Let me ask you, did you dare to be magnanimous in front of Dendi during the Valley of the Gods incident? Great Elder Yun Tian's eyes became frighteningly sharp. There would be a day when ghosts would come knocking on the door after doing something wrong. Boom! Raging might of the great path exploded. Great Elder Yun Tian gave up on suppressing the spread of the rule poison in his body and used all of his cultivation to strengthen his will of the great path. His palms changed, and terrible cracks appeared in the space where they were. His 5 fingers shot towards Li Xiuxing. In an instant, endless cloud power was sucked in from afar, turning into terrible turbulence of the great path. Be careful. Saint Emperor Zhang's expression changed greatly. Old Ancestor Yun Tian had given up on suppressing the poison. This was a drastic measure, and he was prepared to stake it all on this. Heaven overturning slash. Li Xiuxing roared and ignored the might of the way coming from Elder Yun Tian. He slashed forward with his palm, and a beam of palm light appeared. The power of heaven and earth split open the space. Patriarch Cloud Sky turned to flee, but the palm landed squarely on his back. His skin split open, and blood spurted out. He resisted the urge to scream, and turned into a beam of Emperor Dao light, escaping into the spatial crack. His aura quickly teleported into the distance. Boom! At the same time, Li Xiuxing was caught in the turbulent flow of cloud power. Space distorted, producing a terrifying force that tried to kill his body. With a thunderous roar, Li Xiuxing spat out a mouthful of blood, as if he was suffering from 1,000 cuts. He screamed miserably. He had used all of his strength to attack and didn't defend at all. Even so, by relying on his solid foundation, he forcefully dispersed the turbulent flow of cloud power. Stay! Holy Emperor Jiang roared angrily as he struck out with his palm towards the direction where Ancestor Yun Tian was escaping. Whoosh! At the same time, the sword light that was shuttling back and forth between the ruins of the city above clouds also shot out a beam of sword chi towards Ancestor Yun Tian. Unfortunately, Makamanji and Holy Emperor Jiang's cultivation was not as high as ancestor Yuntian's, and their attacks missed. Their opponent's plan was very accurate, and he had severely injured Li Xiuxing, the only one who could stop him. Holy Emperor Jiang and Makamanji naturally couldn't catch up to him. Damn it! Li Xiuxing gritted his teeth. Their plan had failed, and Yun Tian had escaped at the critical moment. Holy Emperor Jiang was also disappointed. Before they attacked, they had promised Qin Hao that they would kill ancestor Yun Tian. Now it was all for naught. Boom! Gotcha! A bolt of lightning suddenly descended from the sky, and the huge commotion immediately attracted everyone's attention. In the next moment, they saw a figure appear in front of them, punching the void. That was the path that great ancestor Yun Tian had taken to escape. However, this path was pierced by a terrifying bolt of lightning. Very soon, a miserable shriek rang out from the distance. Ancestor Yun Tian, who had a hole in his chest, fell from the sky, covered in lightning. He fell to the ground, not making a sound as he fell. Who is it? Makamanji was trembling in fear. The will of thunder that was blasted out just now was simply terrifying. However, the person who attacked did not pay attention to them at all. After killing ancestor Yun Tian, he instantly disappeared into the void, as if he had never appeared. Who is this? Li Xiuxing was shocked as well. It was too strong. While it was true that Grandmaster Yun Tian had taken a hit, he was still a true self who had comprehended a flawless true self. It was easy to imagine how strong the attacker was for him to be killed with a single punch. It was too fast. I didn't see it clearly. Holy Emperor Jiang's face was bitter. With his cultivation, he could only faintly see a purple robe flash by. The attack was too fast. In the next moment, ancestor Yun Tian was killed. His speed of tearing through space was not as fast as this person's might. In the world, other than Qin Hao, Holy Emperor Jiang had never seen such a strong cultivator. Not only was his movement extremely fast, but the strength of his might was also unfathomable. His cultivation should be at least in the unblemished realm. The scene fell into a short silence. Holy Emperor Jiang, Li Xiuxing, and Makamanji were all stunned by the methods of the strong cultivator who had suddenly appeared. After a while, the sound of Cloud City collapsing was heard from the ground. Only then did the three of them come back to their senses. Makamanji glanced at Li Xiuxing. After taking a full blow from ancestor Yun Tian, Li Xiuxing was heavily injured. Many bones in his imperial body were shattered. He said, "Senior's injuries cannot be delayed. We have to meet up with Denda quickly. Yes, take the body of old dog Yun Tian. Let's go." Holy Emperor Jiang's hand flew into the air. His imperial will locked onto the body, and he reached out to grab it. Then, Makamanji supported the heavily injured Li Xiuxing. The three of them flew away from the middle world. Li Xiuxing had been severely injured by ancestor Yun Tian's rules. Even though Holy Emperor Jiang's methods were extraordinary, he did not have the ability to condense bones for him. Qin Hao had to do it, and it could not be delayed. Not long after the three of them left, two figures appeared on the ruins of Cloud City. They were like two peerless ancient swords with extraordinary temperament. Holy Emperor Jiang of the northern frontier, and Li Xiuxing of the proud god Li clan of the southern territory. If Yun Tian had not escaped, he would have died without a doubt, one of the figures said. It was Zhuang the Great, the master of Zhuang Sword Palace in the Middle World. Isn't it the same? Hyuning spread his hands and smiled. Then, he stared at the sky and felt the remaining aura of thunder in the air. His brows furrowed. Brother, who is that? I don't know. The might of the Wei is too strong, and the thunder is too glaring. I can't see clearly. Zhuang the Great shook his head. This person's strength was probably above his. This made Hyuning reveal a look of surprise. Was this person so strong? His brother, Zhuang the Great, had now entered the unblemished imperial plane. Judging from his brother's tone, the person who killed ancestor Yun Tian might be stronger than his brother. Let's go. He's back. Wuk should also be in the East Continent now. We haven't seen each other for 20 years. I wonder how that kid is doing now. I'm looking forward to it. Juing the Great smiled. A wisp of sword will appeared under his feet. He and Hyun Ing flew into the air and disappeared in a flash. Chapter 1895. Not long after Juying Emperor and Swordmaster Hyuning left, many more powerful cultivators sensed the commotion and came over. The sect master of White Lunar Pavilion, the ancestor of the Ghost Baron Kingdom, the second lord of Leichuan Judgment Hall, Lei Jiao, Jixia Academy's sword Venerable, Old Man Taya, and many other important figures of the middle world gathered here. Seeing the ruins of city above clouds and the corpses of the Yuntian Palace disciples under the rubble, the powerful figures of the middle world all fell silent. The beautiful city above the clouds, which was famous in the East Continent for its magnificent scenery of immortal fantasy, was destroyed in a single day. All deacons and elders above the Emperor realm were killed. Apart from a few disciples with low cultivation who were knocked unconscious by Dao might, the whole sect was basically wiped out. Among them was a powerful emperor-level cultivator, the cousin of the Yuntian Palace's sect master. His divine soul was destroyed by a powerful sword chi. Tragic, incomparably tragic. The powerful figures of the middle world didn't know who did it, but to be able to destroy an overlord force in such a short time, especially one of the more powerful forces of the Yuntian Palace, it was obvious that the attacker was no ordinary person. They didn't find the body of the ancestor of the Yuntian Palace, but judging from the extent of the destruction, the ancestor of the Yuntian Palace might have been killed on the spot. The powerful figures sighed silently. Since the opening of the burial god ruins, the people of the four regions had brought out many powerful emperor-level weapons and high-grade emperor-level technique. Someone must have taken advantage of the situation and was preparing to reshuffle the East Continent and establish a new orthodoxy. The destruction of the Yuntian Palace wasn't a good sign. Chaos was coming. The sect master of White Lunar Pavilion and a group of people left one after another. They at most sympathized with the tragic state of the Yuntian Palace, but no one would stand out to uphold justice. The cultivation world was a place where the strong preyed on the weak. Other than that, after the powerful figures returned, they immediately strengthened the security of their sect and began to recall their disciples to prevent the Yuntian Palace from following in their footsteps. Of course, there were also a few kind-hearted elders who rescued many injured disciples of the Yuntian Palace from the ruins and took them away. However, these didn't matter to the major forces. On this day, the destruction of the Yuntian Palace shook the middle world. Not only the middle world, after the East Sea War spread, the fall of the Heavenly Shaker clan and the death of the ancestor of the Heavenly Sword sect also caused a huge commotion. At once, the overlords of the five overlords realized the severity of the problem. They knew that this was the backlash from the opening of the burial god ruins. Everyone was in danger and they panicked. At this moment, the first peak of the sun, in a space opened up by a strong grand Tao insight, the chess game played by the gods of the heavens and the earth appeared once more. A boundlessly enormous chessboard was placed on the ground, and the chess lines that were suffused with the dazzling radiance of the laws crisscrossed and covered the world. On the chessboard, the black and white chess pieces that contained the power of the divine way manifested their abilities. Under Ning Tianxing's lead, or rather, the artifact spirit and Ning Tianxing's lead, the black and white chess pieces gathered together in a regular pattern, forming layers of thick barriers of divine power. They formed an absolute defensive formation. The situation seemed very dangerous. At this moment, a terrifying purple arrow flew through the heavens and earth chessboard. The dazzling light took away all the light in the chessboard. Even the divine power couldn't stop it. With a loud boom, the layers of divine power barriers were shattered by this purple arrow. The heavens and earth chessboard's Emperor God's law disappeared. Puff! Ning Tianqing spat out a mouthful of blood, as if he had suffered a huge injury. He retreated in panic, and almost lost his balance. He felt that his sovereign spirit was about to be pierced by the purple arrow. At the moment when the Emperor God's law was broken, the pitiful cry of the elder weapon spirit came from the broken chessboard. An ugly ghost face full of chess pieces appeared, twisted in pain and seemed to be begging for mercy. Do you understand? At this moment, a figure stood calmly in front of Ning Tianqing. He was dressed in a simple green robe and exuded an unparalleled domineering power. Ning Tianqing looked at this figure in horror. His gallbladder was about to burst open and his entire body was trembling. At this moment, he no longer had the arrogance of Crown Prince Ning. He had no fighting spirit and his only emotion was fear. This was because the person in front of him was the strongest martial artist in the divine wilderness, the Sunset Battle God. The Sunset Battle God's arrow gave him a feeling that it was even stronger than Qin Hao's. It made Ning Tianqing feel extreme fear. He knew that if the battle god hadn't shown mercy, the power of that arrow could have killed the weapon spirit of the chessboard and destroyed the divine path. You will never be able to unify the East continent. The martial arts and divine power you know are weak in front of me. It's just a joke. From now on, you only need to remember that the nine-tailed celestial fox, Crown Prince Ning Tianqing, no longer exists in this world. Only the servant of the battle god, Ning Tianqing, can work for me with peace of mind. Zhan Wu said expressionlessly. In his hand was a terrifying divine bow that flowed with divine light. The divine light flowed like liquid and merged with his will as if it was a part of his soul. It's the battle god. Plop! There was a heavy sound of kneeling. Ning Tianqing, who was in dire straits, abandoned the dignity that was as important as his life and knelt in front of the sunset battle god. Endless despair surged in his heart. He knew very well that Zhan Wu hadn't lied to him. In this lifetime, he would never be a match for Zhan Wu. It wasn't just him. Perhaps Qin Hao didn't know what kind of opponent he was about to face. Perhaps when Dendi understood, Qin Hao's mood would be Ning Tianqing. Who was the peak at the end of the Emperor's path? The power of the Sunset Battle God's arrow was far from what the rumors said. Under the arrow of the battle god, even Dendi would be obliterated. Zhan Wu glanced at Ning Tianqing indifferently, and the Sunset Battle God's bow in his hand dissipated. From the moment Crown Prince Ning Tianqing was brought here, Ning Tianqing hadn't said a word of threat because Zhan Wu didn't need it at all. And after this arrow, Ning Tianqing knew what the consequences of betrayal were. Even God couldn't save him. Godfather, something big has happened. At this time, the voice of the battle tower came from outside the space. It sounded quite urgent. Hearing this, Zhan Wu took a step forward and disappeared into the space. Ning Tianqing stood there alone. Sensing the space condensed by the unparalleled battle intent, a sorrowful laugh came from his throat. It sounded like he was crying and laughing at the same time. The space trapped him like a cage, firmly locking him in this place. Soon, Zhan Wu returned to the War God Temple and appeared on the throne. Thinking of the scene just now, great disappointment appeared on his face. He had only shown a little of his power, but Crown Prince Ning Tianqing's will was completely destroyed. What chosen one? He had unified the 5 realms of the East continent, but he could only be a puppet in the future. Godfather, the East Sea's heaven-shaking clan and the Middle World's Yuntian palace were destroyed together. Great Ancestor Han Tian and Great Ancestor Yun Tian died together. Battle Tower said solemnly. Qin Hao acted really quickly. He had just brought Ning Tianqing back, and Dendi had directly wiped out 2 overlord forces. I know this. Zhan Wu's expression didn't change. You know? Battle Tower was slightly surprised. Great Ancestor Han Tian was killed by a sword Dao brat in the southern region. You have seen him in the Valley of the Gods. You even praised that person, saying that he was really talented and could become a rare talent by Denda's side in the future. As for the Yuntian Palace, old monster Jiang is getting bolder and bolder. He actually joined forces with Li Xiusheng to fight against Yun Zhongyang. If Yun Zhongyang hadn't failed to pass the tribulation and happened to be in a weakened state, Holy Emperor Jiang and Li Xiusheng wouldn't have been able to return. However, I have already sent people to eliminate Yun Zhongyang. This person is too much of a threat to Qin Hao, Zhan Wu said. The lightning that killed great ancestor Yuntian was the imperial censor. Chapter 1896. Yun Zhongyang was not as simple as he looked. In the battle with Li Xiusheng, he had at most used 60% of his peak strength. No one knew what he had secretly obtained or who had instructed him. A few months ago, Zhan Wu faintly felt a wave of Emperor's will from the Middle Land. Although he deliberately suppressed it, it still could not escape his perception. The Emperor's will had blended with the heavenly path and was close to the flawless realm. Perhaps because he had been too hasty, he had failed to break through. Later, Zhan Wu secretly investigated and found that it was great ancestor Yun Tian who had done it. Yun Zhongtian's foundation is extraordinary, but his cultivation is not enough to break through to the flawless realm. There should be someone helping him from behind. Zhan Wu pondered. Qin Hao had acted without knowing. Fortunately, great ancestor Yun Tian had failed to pass the tribulation. Otherwise, it might have brought unexpected trouble. If he got rid of him as soon as possible, he would avoid a disaster. Unfortunately, Zhan Wu did not have enough time to find out who was helping Yun Zhongtian behind the scenes, but it was not too important. Under the water of the Eastland, there are really a few monsters hidden, Zhan Lu said. Yun Zhongtian had stepped into the flawless realm, so he was indeed a disaster. Then, Zhan Lu took out a few letters and presented them. For you. It will be sent to Sunset Peak in almost a quarter of an hour. Open it and read it, Zhan Wu said. Zhan Lu nodded. Dilly flowed in his palm to erase the remaining power of will on the letters. When it was erased, the owner of the letter would know that it had been opened. Phoenix Flower Island in the Northland, Phoenix Flower Sovereign, on behalf of Daqin Dendi, invites the war god to the Northland to reminisce about the past. Qilin Taoist sect in the Southland, on behalf of Daqin Dendi, invites the war god to the Southland to reminisce about the past. Shua clan in the East Sea, on behalf of Daqin Dendi, invites the war god to Penglai to reminisce about the past. There were 3 letters in total. When Zhanlo opened them one by one and read them, he was slightly stunned. According to Meng Xiang, the 3 letters were all delivered to the war god guards within a quarter of an hour. However, on the letters, other than the person who wrote them and the location, the contents were exactly the same. It was worth thinking about. The hall fell silent. Soon, the sunset battle god let out a few loud laughs, revealing a faint helplessness. Ha ha ha, as expected of him. With this, even I don't know what his next step will be. Outside the Dao Gate, War Tower and Kuei Han intercepted Dendi. On the battlefield of the southern mountain range, the battle tower broke through the formation and rescued Ning Tianxing. Qin Hao's every move had been predicted by Zhan Wu, and this inevitably caused Dendi to have misgivings. Therefore, he sent 3 letters at the same time, and the contents of each letter were the same. It was obvious that he wanted to confuse Zhan Wu so that he would not be able to predict Qin Hao's actions. According to the letter, Dendi was in the southern Dao sect. Dendi was in the northern Phoenix Flower sect. Dendi was also in the eastern Sea Penglai sect. Where should Zhan Wu go to attend the meeting? In fact, he knew that Qin Hao might not even be present at any of these 3 places. It would only be empty talk if he went. Or even Qin Hao might be in one of them. It was hard to say. However, Zhan Wu was more worried that Qin Hao would appear here directly after he left the Sunset Peak. If he destroyed the Sunset Battle God's lair, it would be a joke in the 5 realms. What are you going to do? Zhan Lu also felt a headache. Go? Or not? I'm not going. Zhan Wu's answer was very decisive. This Dao Peak was condensed by Qin Hao's will of Dao from his previous life. It contains a wisp of his will of the Emperor. He wants to trick me into leaving so that he can take back this will of the Emperor and further strengthen his cultivation. I can't let Qin Hao succeed. The Sunset Battle God was like a child who refused to let his opponent get what he wanted. Even if he got what he wanted, he couldn't do it according to Qin Hao's method. Zhan Wu had his own plans. Zhan Lu froze in place and smiled helplessly. The game between his foster father and Dendi was really. Then you have to give us some instructions. Kuei Han came back from the Dao sect with a belly full of anger. In the Northern Territory, more than 10 divine generals led their divine guards and arranged for a decisive battle with the Phoenix Flower sect. They couldn't keep wasting time. Withdraw the troops. Zhan Wu said, this is a deliberate war for outsiders to see. It's meaningless. Withdraw all the troops. And then, don't move. That kid has gathered a lot of experts now. You have to keep an eye on Kuei Han. Zhan Wu ordered seriously. Ancestor Bo Changji, Phoenix Flower Supreme Fenglan, Li Xiuxing of the Southern Territory, Old Monster Jiang of the Northern Territory, and Ancestor Shaw of the Eastern Sea were all famous experts of the older generation. In addition, Qin Hao had a new flawless Sword Emperor by his side, Sword Master Zhenji. If Kuei Han rushed out recklessly, he wouldn't be able to return. Now the forces gathered by Dendi were no weaker than those of the Sunset Peak and Deqin. Zhan Wu could feel that it wouldn't take long for Kuei Han to set foot on the Sunset Peak. Okay, I'll try my best. Kuei Han was very strong and difficult to control. He was like a barrel of gunpowder that could explode at any time. This made Zhan Lu feel very troubled. In addition, order Cheng Xiang to go to the mysterious Dragon Mountain. Zhuge Xiu hasn't returned yet. Could she have been killed by the mysterious Dragon Great Emperor? Zhan Wu frowned slightly. It seemed that the situation was more serious than he thought. With Zhuge Xiu's ability, she should have returned long ago. Yes. Zhan Lu took the order and left. Among the 5 realms of the Southern Territory, the Northern Territory, the Eastern Sea, and the Eastern Continent, there were experts arranged by Qin Hao in 3 realms. Now the forces gathered were no weaker than those of the Sunset Peak. Even Zhanlo understood that the Pill Emperor wouldn't continue to hide like before. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but once he made a move, it would definitely be earth-shattering. This was also good. A whole 600 years was too long, and they were too tired. Now that Dendi had returned to take control of the Sunset Peak, Zhuge Xiu and the others could finally put down everything and have a good rest. Zhan Lu didn't know what the scene would be like when Qin Hao returned to the Sunset Peak, or what would happen to the group of war god guards. But he knew better than anyone that his foster father never owed Dendi anything. The 30,000 war god guards on the peak all had a clear conscience. Unfortunately, the majority of the people were kept in the dark. They were merely chess pieces used to guide the Alchemy Emperor. Zhan Lu was also one of them. It's time. Zhan Wu stood up from the throne. After 600 years, Qin Hao had finally reincarnated and returned. In this life, he wouldn't allow the previous failure to happen again. He must let Qin Hao find his true self. Even if he had to give up his life, Zhan Wu wouldn't hesitate. However, before Qin Hao set foot on the Sunset Peak, Zhan Wu still had some things to do that couldn't be delayed. Primordial Alchemy Master, please browse for a better user experience. Chapter 1897. The towering peak towered into the 9 heavens, boundlessly magnificent. Looking from the front, the setting sun peak was filled with dazzling golden palaces. The buildings were arranged very closely, as if many majestic cities were connected together, majestic and grand. However, the back of the sunset peak was another scene. Here, countless rare birds soared. Little beasts carried stolen fruits as they wandered in the forest. Looking around, there were precious herbs everywhere, and the air was filled with abundant spirit chi. One divine peak displayed two completely different scenery. The front was majestic and murderous, while the back contained all things. This seemed to represent the two personalities of the sunset war god. The world only saw Zhan Wu's front. At this time, in the endless sea of herbs, a middle-aged man with a strong physique was carrying a huge bucket on his shoulder. The bottom of the bucket was built with a special mechanism. The man opened the valve with his broad palm, and instantly, mist gushed out. A large cloud of water vapor sprayed out, covering a radius of tens of meters around him, drenching the precious herbs in his cultivation until they sparkled and sparkled. The man laughed happily. He enjoyed this kind of rural life very much. There were no disputes, no need to carry fame and fortune. He lived with herbs, birds, and beasts. He lived according to his heart, comfortable and carefree. If the 5 old ancestors of the East Continent saw this scene, their jaws would drop. Who would dare to imagine that Emperor Mu Xinzhao, who caused his family to lose power in the fierce battle on Penglai, was living so comfortably on the sunset peak? A figure silently appeared in the herb garden. Zhan Wu looked at Mu Xinzhao, who was playing with water like a child, and couldn't help but laugh. "Uncle, is this the new thing you just made?" "Ah Wu." Mu Xinzhao heard the voice and pushed the heavy bucket inlaid with 1,000-years-old heavenly iron off his shoulder. He grinned and nodded. "Yes, last time you asked me to make a soul protection emperor weapon for Qin Hao's little girl. In the end, there was a lot of heavenly iron that I didn't use. It was a waste to keep it, so I made a bucket on a whim." "Greetings, Lord War God." One old and one young, 2 figures put down their work and bowed to Zhan Wu. "Xing Yao Lao, it's been hard on you all these years." Zhan Wu sighed. Back then, when the divine palace showed signs of opening, Xinqiu sent Xing to the East Continent, saying that she was going to meet with an important old friend. This person was very important to Qin Hao. Xing agreed without hesitation and rushed to the East Continent, so she did not follow Yi Shuihan and the others to participate in the assessment of the divine palace. Yao Lao was worried, so he came with Xing. In the end, when they arrived and saw Zhan Wu, the 2 of them were scared out of their wits. It was a feeling that ordinary people could not understand. The #1 martial artist in the divine wilderness was right in front of them. It was like a dream, causing them to feel immense fear. Later on, Zhan Wu told them many things and brought them back to Sunset Peak. After living here for dozens of years, they slowly got used to it. Now, from Zhan Wu, they didn't feel the slightest bit of power that the world spoke of, only a sense of familiarity. In terms of hard work, what we have done is far less than 1/10,000th of what you have done, Yao Lao said sincerely, looking at the sunset battle god with eyes full of respect. He knew what Zhan Wu had done for Qin Hao. Humph! In the distance, a cold snort sounded. Zhan Yi was bare-chested, waving a hoe in his hand. He was in the middle of replanting the soil used to cultivate medicinal herbs. He had lived here for 20 years. After Qin Hao was killed by the battle tower in the Valley of the Gods, he had captured him and brought him here as a volunteer. Now, Zhan Yi knew that the sunset battle god was not Denda's mortal enemy. On the contrary, the battle god had always been helping Dendi. Even so, Zhan Yi was still unhappy. Why did he have to capture him? Wasn't it better to capture Xiaogua and Yi Shuihan? Zhan Yi really wanted to return to the outside world and follow Qin Hao to do great things. Even if it was just acting, it was better than facing flowers and herbs all day. It was too much of a waste of his ability. What are you snorting for? You can't even take a punch from me. With your looks, you still have the face to be Zhan Lang's descendant? Mu Xinzhao said, pouring a bucket of cold water on Zhan Yi. After hearing this, Zhang Yi laughed foolishly, not daring to refute Mu Xinzhao. After all, this person's status was higher than Zhan Zhu and Zhan Lang. When Denda saw him, he had to call himself a junior. "Year, I know that leaving you here makes you feel uncomfortable. It's fine now. You can leave immediately," Zhan Wu said. "Really?" Zhang Yi stopped waving his hoe and turned to look at the sunset battle god. Zhan Wu nodded. "Really?" The final battle of the East Continent was about to arrive. Zhang Yi would become a member of the Battle God Guards and represent the Sunset Battle God to stop Dendi from attacking the Sunset Peak. "Ah Wu, isn't it time?" Mu Xinzhao looked at Zhan Wu's expression and understood the meaning of his words. "It will be very painful. But to complete that task, you have to bear this pain," Zhan Wu said. "Phew." Mu Xinzhao slowly exhaled. His mood began to become heavy. He clenched his powerful fists and gritted his teeth as he said to Zhan Wu, "Come on. If you want to do it ruthlessly. Don't let Qin Hao see any clues. Uncle Mu, this is what I owe you. This is also what Qin Hao owes you. I really didn't want you to bear this pain. Please accept my defeat." Zhan Wu bowed and said. Mu Xinzhao reached out to help Zhan Wu up. His eyes flashed with a complicated luster. "How can there be no price to pay to achieve great things? I can only bear the pain of the flesh, but what you have to bear is hundreds of years of spiritual torment. The contempt of the people of the world, the curses of the people of Daqin, and the contempt of the experts of the 5 realms. Have you ever said it was painful? Come on, do it. Do it quickly," Mu Xinzhao urged. It was just giving up his cultivation and destroying his emperor's path. If he could help Qin Hao achieve his dream, even if Zhan Wu killed him, Mu Xinzhao would not complain. How many people had sacrificed their lives for this day? Tens of thousands of people of the Mu clan in the East Sea had died. Now that he was about to succeed, Zhan Wu would not be soft on him. Buzz! An abundant fighting spirit swept out from Zhan Wu's body. The pure power of the Wei turned into countless rays of light that danced in front of everyone's eyes. In an instant, Xing Yao Lao, and even Zhang Yi in the distance felt as if their bodies had been shattered. They could not help but retreat from this area. Zhan Wu raised his palm, and a radiance containing an unparalleled overbearing battle intent covered Mu Xinzhao's head. Millions of dazzling particles swallowed Mu Xinzhao, and streams of blood sprayed out from the radiance. Even though Mu Xinzhao had gritted his teeth and endured it, there were still extremely suppressed cries of pain coming from within. Just hearing this sound made Xing Yao Lao and Zhang Yi feel a chill run down their spines. Chapter 1898. The pain didn't last long. Soon, as the light particles disappeared, Mu Xinzhao, who had been full of energy a moment ago, lay paralyzed on the ground like a pile of mud. If it weren't for the weak aura coming from his body, he would be no different from a corpse. Yao Lao looked at this scene and felt his heart clench. His emperor bones were shattered and his veins were destroyed. In the blink of an eye, a true self-cultivator with perfect Tao will had become a cripple. Other than the emperor's ring, Mu Xinzhao's life was completely over. Xing was also greatly shocked. Her eyes were filled with sadness. She couldn't bear to look at Uncle Mu's miserable state. How much courage did it take to give up his emperor's path cultivation? She hoped that the young master wouldn't disappoint these people. Awesome, awesome. I've never felt this relaxed before. It's like a heavy mountain has been removed from my body. It's so comfortable. Ha ha, cough cough. Mu Xinzhao lay on the ground with his head tilted to one side. His veins and bones were all destroyed. Even turning his neck was an extravagant hope. Zhan Wu shifted his gaze away from Mu Xinzhao. He waved his hand towards the empty garden. Immediately afterwards, several God of War guards in mighty armor lifted Mu Xinzhao up from the ground. One of them pierced through Mu Xinzhao's shoulder blades with a vicious iron chain that they had forged beforehand. Together with his palms and feet, 6 iron chains pierced through his body. These iron chains were made by Mu Xinzhao himself. They were made of precious materials and were even emperor weapons. They had the power to transform. After the iron chains recognized a master, they could connect with the master's Tao will and extend according to the master's will. They also had the terrifying effect of absorbing life force. He named them life chains. No one in the world understood the fear of the life chains better than Mu Xinzhao. Piercing through his body was just the beginning. Next, his life force and the Tao will power in the Emperor's ring would flow through the life chains to the Sunset Peak and nourish the herb garden under his feet. The pain he had to endure during this process was even more intense than when Zhan Wu destroyed his Emperor body. From now on, there is no more Penglai artifact immortal in the world. There is only the cripple Mu Xinzhao. Take him away. Zhan Wu ordered. Yes. Each war god guard held a life shackle and dragged Mu Xianzhao into the distance. With a huge commotion, 6 shackles were inserted into the peak-suppressing stone, sealing Mu Xianzhao. That's a little too ruthless. Zhan Ye's palms were drenched in cold sweat as he watched. He didn't think there was a need to be so ruthless. A layer of monarch light appeared on Zhan Wu's hand and gradually condensed into a dazzling divine armor. He tossed it to Zhan Yi and said, "Do you think your mission is lighter than Uncle Mu's?" Zhan Yi lowered his head and looked at the divine armor in his hand. The design was the same as the one Meng Xiang was wearing. However, there was a missing arrow emblem on his shoulder, which meant that he was 1 level lower than Meng Xiang. If you wear it, you might die. Think about it carefully before you decide whether to wear it or not, Zhan Wu said. Zhan Yi looked at Mu Xianzhao, who was sealed on the peak-suppressing stone. Now Mu Xianzhao was covered in blood. Traces of dilly halo were slowly flowing along the life shackle toward the medicine store. He knew that Zhan Wu wasn't joking. When he put on the divine armor, he would be a divine general under the war god. There would be no more Zhan Yi in the world. If I die, so be it. Actually, I want to see what kind of expression Xiaogua and Yi Shuihan will have when they feel fear. Zhan Yi waved his hand and the divine armor rose into the sky and slowly fell down. Suddenly, an extremely bright light bloomed. In the next moment, Zhan Ye's figure disappeared and was replaced by a divine general of the Sunset Peak. He was wearing mighty armor and emitting a cold aura. Divine General, Invincible Blade, greets the war god. Zhan Yi clasped his hands together and knelt down. He carried a huge blade on his shoulder and the aura he gave off became even more domineering. Xing Er and Yao Lao's faces trembled. If they didn't know that this person was Zhan Yi, they might really think that he was a cold-blooded warrior. Go. From now on, you will report directly to Meng Xiang and be his deputy, Zhan Wu said as he watched Zhan Yi, who was carrying a huge saber on his back, leave with heavy steps. Invincible Blade? This kid sure knows how to come up with names. After dealing with the two of them, Zhan Wu looked at Xing Er and Yao Lao and smiled. No way, even we. Xing Er took a step back and subconsciously looked at the miserable Mu Xianzhao. She didn't want to end up like that. It's fine. Although Xing Er's cultivation is not as strong as that of the Zhan family's brat, she's more than capable of being an elite divine guard. You can arrange a job for her and let this old man bear the burden alone. Yao Lao still cared for his disciple very much. As he spoke, he pulled up his arm and rolled up his sleeve. He even directly began to take off his clothes, as if he was going to sacrifice himself for a cause. You've misunderstood. Just keep it the way you are. Only when you're treated like a guest like this will Qin Hao feel that it's real, said Jianchen. There was no need for the two of them to put on a show. However, their attitudes obviously had to change. I understand. Xing Er nodded. Her eyes that looked at Zhan Wu immediately became extremely cold and filled with great hatred. It felt like she had seen her father's murderer. Hee hee, smart girl. You can continue. Before Qin Hao comes, someone needs to look after the garden. Zhan Wu let out a long breath and flew towards the temple on the peak. He had done everything that needed to be done. He only needed to wait for Qin Hao to come and fight him to the death on the Sunset Peak. Perhaps this was the only way to let Dende find his lost self and fulfill the long-cherished wish that had eluded him for several lifetimes. Many people would die in this battle, and Zhan Wu was no exception. However, he would rather die than see Qin Hao continue to be reborn. Moreover, if he failed again, Dende would basically have no chance of being reborn. For this, he was willing to risk everything. Uncle Mu's life, Zhang Ye's life, the 19 divine generals on the peak, the 30,000 divine guards, and the Sunset Battle God's own life. Qin Hao naturally did not know what Zhan Wu had done. However, after today, the East Continent once again welcomed a new change. The divine guards of the Sunset Peak that surrounded the north all returned to their base. This caused the 9 branches of the Phoenix Flower sect, who were originally at daggers drawn and ready for a bitter battle, to sigh in relief. Phoenix Flower Prime Feng Lan felt that this was normal. After all, that letter was not for show. It was extremely threatening. It was completely reasonable for the Sunset Battle God to withdraw his troop. However, the disciples of the 9 branches did not know that Dende had sent 3 invitations to the Sunset Peak. Even the island masters, including Yun Ro, were completely unaware. When they saw the divine generals of the Sunset Peak leading an overwhelming number of divine guards to leave the north, they were all delighted. However, the upper echelons of the various islands fell into doubt and their hearts were somewhat heavy. They nervously believed that the Sunset Battle God was preparing for an even bigger move. It was impossible for him to give up on attacking the 9 branches. Perhaps the next time he came, it would not only be the divine guards, but also the enormous military force of the Daqin Empire. Unknowingly, Zhan Wu's withdrawal did not reduce the pressure on the 9 branches. Instead, it created an even more pressing sense of crisis. Chapter 1899. North Border. 100 Spirit Island. In the center of the island. 100 Spirit Island. On the Spirit Dao Peak there was a bustling scene. After the 9 Pulse martial arts sparring competition, Yun Bao had accidentally exposed her bloodline constitution and attracted the attention of the 5 borders. Because of that battle, Elder Fenghua had met her doom in advance. After that, the battle tower conveyed the will of the god of war. Within a month, Fenghua had to hand over Dende's daughter to the Sunset Peak. If she didn't, she would have to bear the consequences. Now, the islands of the 9 Pulses were on high alert. Many forces of the East Continent that had deep ties with Fenghua had sent masters from their sect to intimidate the divine generals of the Sunset Peak. The West World Immortal sect was one of the forces that had reinforced Fenghua. The internal structure of the Immortal sect was similar to that of the Qilin sect. Many families were in charge at the same time. The masters of the families abandoned the idea of not teaching their families' secret techniques to outsiders and put the high-level techniques of their families in the Immortal Sect Pavilion to increase the strength of the disciples of the Immortal Sect. The tradition continued to this day, and the elders of the sect were also masters from the families. At the moment, many disciples of 100 Spirit Island were practicing array techniques on the 100 Spirit Island. As the techniques flew, the light of the array was sometimes bright and sometimes dim. It was very mysterious. Among them, there was a group of people who stood out. They were a group of men who didn't participate in the practice. They were watching from afar, nodding and praising from time to time. Mother said that the 100 Spirit sect is not only the best in the East Continent, but their array techniques are also outstanding. Today, I see that they live up to their reputation. A handsome young man spoke. His voice was gentle, and his aura made people feel comfortable. That's enough. Compared to the Immortal sect, our array techniques are like showing off in front of an expert. We can't afford to be outstanding. Li Lufeng rolled her eyes at the young man. Who in the East Continent didn't know that the immortal sect's strongest technique was array techniques? It was said that only the Qilin sect in its heyday could surpass the immortal sect. Other than that, no one in the East Continent could overshadow the immortal sect in terms of array technique. This guy came from a family in charge of the immortal sect and was well versed in array technique. He did it on purpose, right? Haha, junior brothers Su and Miss Lufeng have formed a good match. After the storm subsides, she will enter the celestial sect and become the wife of the Su family's young master. No matter how good the 100 spirits array formation is, it will naturally be perfect in junior brother Su's eyes. Beside the handsome young man stood another handsome young man with an extremely outstanding bearing. Compared to the handsome young man, this person seemed to be even more outstanding. However, his eyes contained an icy cold arrogance that faintly gave others the feeling that he looked down on everything. In this regard, he was not as approachable as Su Cheng. Hu Qianxiu was the young master of the Hu clan, one of the aristocratic families that controlled the immortal sect. Hu Qianxiu's cultivation was at the limit of the 8th level, and he was only a step away from becoming an imperial lord. He was publicly acknowledged as the person with the strongest natural talent and strength amongst the younger generation of the 3 clans, and even Su Qing, who was similarly the successor of the patriarch, was slightly inferior to him. Currently, Hu Qianxiu and Su Qing were both at the 100 Spirits Island. There was no other reason other than Su Cheng's mother was the junior sister of Island Master Yunro, and she had married into the West World's immortal sect. When the sect was in trouble, Su Cheng's mother naturally could not sit idly by. She personally rushed over and brought her son Su Cheng along, vowing to protect the 100 Spirits ancestral sect. As for Hu Qianxiu, he came together with Su Cheng. The two of them were both the next generation of immortal sect leaders, and their relationship was naturally very close. However, he came this time not only because of his relationship with Su Cheng, but also because of Yunbao. Dendi, a name that had spread throughout the East Continent for hundreds of years, was the symbol of the era's experts, and was comparable to the current sunset battle god. Who in the 5 dimensions did not respect him back then. As Denda's daughter, Yunbao was born under her father's glory. Naturally, she was blessed with an incomparably noble status the moment she was born. It was not that Hu Qianxiu admired Yunbao, but he wanted to see Denda's daughter. The outside world had spread rumors of Yunbao, saying that she had proven her Tao and battled a Archmaster. With her 7th heaven strength, she had defeated multiple Phoenix Flower first seats consecutively. As the most outstanding junior of the immortal sect, Hu Qianxiu could be considered a flag of the immortal sect. He also had extraordinary talent, and naturally, he wanted to see if Denda's daughter was as unparalleled as the rumors said. Miss Lufeng, please do not take it to heart. Qianxiu has always been like this, and I have been a little too blunt. When Su Cheng heard Hu Qianxiu's words, he shook his head and laughed. There was nothing to say about this brother's talent and strength, but his temper was not very good. He had clearly said a sentence out of the blue, but it gave off a faint sense of coldness and sarcasm. Actually, he was not a bad person at heart. Li Lufeng pouted. It seemed that Hu Qianxiu was right. She had long been engaged to the immortal sect's Su clan. This was a major matter that had been decided in her 3rd year in Bailing. The purpose was naturally to maintain the relationship between the Bailing sect and the Su clan. Although Li Lufeng's heart was against it at first, after meeting Su Cheng and understanding his character, she unknowingly felt a strong sense of anticipation. It was as if her heart was telling her that she wanted to marry Su Cheng as soon as possible. Senior Lufeng, why is your face red? Zhu Xing looked at the distracted Li Lufeng. What was she thinking about? No. Li Lufeng was awakened by her words. She quickly patted her cheeks. It was so hot. When Hu Qianxiu saw this, he laughed softly in his heart. Women. Junior Zhu Xing, look. At this moment, Li Lufeng pointed to a peak. There, a figure stood alone. It was as if her gaze had flown out of Bailing Island and was looking at the North Sea. Bao Zhu Xing murmured. Emperor light appeared on her body, and she flew towards that direction. Zhu Xing, wait for me. Li Lufeng raised her hand and shouted. She turned her head and glanced at Su Qing. She felt her cheeks getting hotter and hotter. Hee, Miss Lufeng has been conquered by your charisma. Congratulations, Su Qing. You've won the heart of a beauty. Hu Qianxiu said indifferently. It's my honor. Su Qing smiled. He also liked Li Lufeng. She wasn't scheming, she was just like a silly girl. At this moment, Su Qing's gaze was fixed in that direction. He said, Qianxiu, didn't you come to Bailing for Miss Bao? Now that the beauty is in front of you, maybe you should change your wooden face. Maybe you'll be able to win her heart like me. Boring. Hu Qianxiu said indifferently. Immediately after, Dilly surged beneath his feet and he flew towards that peak. Hemen. Su Qing closed the paper fan in his hand and tapped it against his palm. He smiled and chased after Hu Qianxiu. Chapter 1900. The Immortal Gate of the Western Land had a deep relationship with the Hundred Spirits sect. Su Cheng's mother and Island Lord Yunro were martial sisters. Both the Immortal Gate and the Hundred Spirit Island naturally wanted to continue their relationship. As one of the leaders, Hu Qianxiu was the only candidate for the Hu clan's successor. He would be the future master of the Immortal Gate. If he could marry Denda's daughter, it would definitely be a good story. In Su Cheng's view, both sides were of equal status. As descendants of overlords, Yunbao and Hu Qianxiu could be considered a match. Although Dendu was no longer in the world and the Daqin territory was no longer the Qin clan's territory, Su Qing believed that Hu Qianxiu wouldn't care about this. Even if Yunbao lost her family, it was fine as long as she had talent. Of course, she also had to be beautiful. Powerful talent had always been the cornerstone of supporting aristocratic families. It determined the talent of the next generation. The overlords of the Five Land especially valued this. As for other things, the Immortal Gate was strong enough now. Moreover, Yunbao had Island Lord Yunro behind her. It didn't matter whether Dendi was here or not. Yunbao stood on the precipitous peak with the tip of her foot. Her ramrod straight figure was extremely pleasing to the eye. As the wind blew past, her hair fluttered, and the aura she emanated was like that of a celestial maiden from the 9 heavens. She was pure, spirited, and imposing. It was an extremely beautiful scene. After awakening her evil force and fighting with Sikong Shu and Lian Han, Yunbao fell into a coma because she couldn't adapt to the evil force. She had just woken up a few days ago. When she learned about Feng Hua's current situation from Zhu Xing, her heart was very heavy. Grandma Zhu. Bao clenched her fist and looked up at the sky. Her slightly pale face showed sadness. In order to stop War Tower, Grandmother Zhu had burned her lifespan, which was already nearing the end of her lifespan. Her departure had planted a wound in Bao heart. Whenever she thought of Grandmother Zhu's kind face, endless sadness would surge in her heart. Grandma Zhu could no longer teach her emperor technique. Because of her, Feng Hua had angered the War God Temple, causing tens of thousands of divine guards and divine generals to lead their troops to the Northland. The Phoenix Flower 9 veins were in grave danger. Bao was well aware of how powerful the War God Temple was. When she was young, the battle tower had left a huge shadow in her heart. And now, because of her, the entire northern territory had sunk into a state of chaos. When she thought about her grandmother's death, she was filled with guilt. Bao, your body is still very weak. Didn't Master tell you to stay in your room and recuperate? Zhu Xing stepped forward to support her. She was very worried that Yunbao would accidentally fall from such a high height. She had completely forgotten that Yunbao had the strength to fight against 2 Emperor Masters. I'm sorry. Bao looked at Zhu Xing with red eyes. Zhu Xing was silent. She did not know how to comfort Bao. Seeing Bao in a bad mood and become completely different from before, Zhu Xing felt very sad. The War God Temple has always looked down on the 5 realms. They are overbearing and ruthless in their actions. Even if you don't have Denda's blood flowing in your veins, they will suppress Fenghua sooner or later. Your appearance only gave them a more reasonable motive and excuse. You don't have to take it to heart. Hu Qianxiu said as several figures flew over, surrounded by Emperor light. They floated in front of Bao. At this moment, his gaze landed on Bao. He stared at this girl seriously. Her temperament, figure, and appearance were all impeccable. Hu Qianxiu admitted that Bao was definitely the easiest to leave an impression on and the most unforgettable among all the girls he had seen. As expected of Denda's descendant. He just did not know if her talent was as unparalleled as the rumors said. Westland Immortal Sect, sect leader whose son, Hu Qianxiu, Li Feng introduced. Li Lufeng introduced and looked shyly at Su Qing. This is Su Qing, the young master of the Su family. He's also senior sister Lufeng's fiancé. I know. Big brother Su, long time no see. You've become even more handsome. Bao tried to smile and said. Su Cheng was a frequent visitor to the 100 Spirits Island. It was Hu Qianxiu's first time here, so he had never met him before. However, Bao knew a thing or two about the immortal sections. The Su family, Hu family, and Quan family were the 3 major powers of the immortal sections. It was said that Hu Qianxiu's strength and talent were above Su Qing and Quan families. He was the most outstanding junior of the immortal sections. He had once defeated a Dao-proving Emperor Lord when he was only at the 8th stage of the Dao-proving realm. Yes, we haven't seen each other for 3 years. Junior sister Bao has become more graceful and beautiful. It's a pity that Qianxiu, Quan Qian, and I were not present at the 9 Pulse martial arts competition. What a pity, Su Qing said. What a pity. The image of the 9 Pulse martial arts competition appeared in Bao's mind. Her pale face showed a touch of bitterness. I'd rather not have a pity. Su Qing. Li Lufeng glared at Su Qing. Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. Su Qing apologized. Some things have already happened. Avoiding them will only make the seed of cowardice grow stronger. The more you avoid it, the bigger its shadow will be. Facing it directly is the best way to break it. Hu Qianxiu said bluntly. Are you teaching me? Yun Bao looked at Hu Qianxiu. What was cowardice? Some pain did not befall her, so it was easy to say it. If sect leader who died in front of Hu Qianxiu and his entire sect was destroyed, would he still be in the mood to talk like this? Bao was not a coward. She needed time to slowly accept it. She would not avoid anything. If the War God Temple attacked the 100 Spirits Island, she would directly go to the battle tower. Would Hu Qianxiu dare? The meaning of cowardice was not determined this way. Junior sister Bao, don't lower yourself to Qianxiu's level. He speaks his mind. That's how people are. He did not mean to lecture you. Su Qing hurriedly explained. This guy, why didn't he know how to be tactful when comforting others? That's what I meant. If you want to lecture me, then lecture me. If the Phoenix Flower incident happened to me, I would not be as depressed as you are. Hu Qianxiu said expressionlessly. 1. Threads of dilly coiled around Bao's body. She stared at Hu Qianxiu with a cold gaze. She sealed herself in the room with a heavy heart. Many pictures involuntarily appeared in her mind. She just wanted to come out to relieve herself. Why did it become cowardice in Hu Qianxiu's mouth? Furthermore, he wanted to lecture her. Hu Qianxiu, if you don't know how to speak, then shut your mouth. No one will treat you as a mute. Do you think you are great? Zhu Xing's attitude towards Hu Qianxiu became extremely cold. Young Master Hu, Bao Zhu Xing, don't be like this. Li Lufeng saw that the situation was not right and could not help but become nervous. I, Hu Qianxiu, have never thought of myself as great. If it is to guide Lady Zhu Xing, I believe my ability should be more than enough. Hu Qianqiu's attitude was firm. He did not give in to the two girls. Qianqiu, this is too much, Su Qing said. It's none of your business. Hu Qianqiu spat out an impatient voice. Su Qing only knew how to nag beside his ear all day long. He grumbled and nagged. Bauer, let's go. Zhu Xing stared at Hu Qianqiu with a heavy expression. She supported Bauer and prepared to leave. She had never seen such a proud and arrogant person. You defeated 3 Emperor Masters at the 7th level of the 9-pulse martial contest. Are you prepared to escape when facing me? Hu Qianqiu's voice came from behind. Bauer paused and pushed Zhu Xing away. She turned around and stared at Hu Qianqiu. What do you want? He doesn't want anything. Junior sister Zhu Xing, bring Bauer back. Su Qing said directly and pulled Hu Qianqiu's arm towards the Bai Ling martial arts stage. Hu Qianqiu opened his 5 fingers and covered Su Qing's hand. He pried open the palm and chuckled at Bauer. It is rumored that Denda's daughter has unparalleled talent. Today, the immortal sex Hu Qianqiu wants to see for himself what is unparalleled. Su Qing, get Hu Qianqiu out of here. I don't want to see this person again. Bai Ling does not welcome him. Li Lufeng clenched his fists and shouted. His eyes were red. Bauer had not recovered yet. Grandmother's departure had a huge impact on her. Hu Qianqiu really did not have the slightest bit of grace. He was blinded by his identity as the immortal sex young master. He took advantage of someone's weakness to request for a battle. Miss Lufeng, do you have a problem with our immortal sect? Hu Qianqiu glanced at Li Lufeng. If this was the case, would Li Lufeng enter the Su clan's door in the future? After all, Hu Qianqiu was in the immortal sect. Hu Qianqiu, you are really biting whoever you catch. I have a good temper. You can do whatever you want. I have already tolerated it. Now why are you dragging Lufeng into this? What does my Su clan's matter have to do with the Hu clan? Su Qing was truly enraged this time. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he realized his mistake and his expression changed slightly. Oh? The Su clan's matter has nothing to do with the Hu clan. Su Qing, do you mean to disband the immortal sect? Hu Qianqiu said seriously. I will not lower myself to your level. Su Qing was so angry that he turned his face away. Let's go. Zhu Xing pulled Bao Er's hand. Hu Qianqiu's words made Bao Er's head feel a sharp pain. She suppressed the pain in her heart and did not make a move. She did not want to use the evil power in her blood. She even started to resist. She remembered that feeling deeply. When the evil power filled Dili and merged with the Tao intent, she would enter a state of excitement. However, her mind would still be very calm. Her thoughts and reactions would become very sharp and active. She would be filled with enjoyment towards killing. Bao Er remembered that feeling. At that time, she would not be able to control herself. She would be driven by the emotions of killing. It was as though she had become another version of herself. She did not want to face such a version of herself. Not only her, if Hu Qianqiu encountered it, Bao Er swore that he would not want to face it a second time. 1. A layer of Tao light bloomed in front of them. It turned into a huge immortal diagram that revolved under Hu Qianqiu's feet. He released his sovereign spirit. The huge immortal diagram quickly spread in all directions. It spread to the bottom of everyone's feet. Instantly, everyone was in the immortal diagram. They felt that the space was sealed by a force. Come, daughter of Dendi. Let me see your talent. Whether you win or lose, I want to witness it. Hu Qianqiu's long hair fluttered. He stood in the center of the immortal diagram. His eyes flashed with excitement. As a cultivator, in this world, most likely any martial artist would want to fight with Dendi. Hu Qianqiu was no exception. Unfortunately, they were born in different eras. Moreover, Dendi had fallen. Hence, Yun Bao Er, who had Denda's blood flowing in her veins, was undoubtedly the best opponent. Hu Qianqiu did not want to miss this opportunity. He was too eager to fight with the former ruler of the East Continent. In his eyes, Yunbao represented Qin Hao. Chapter 1901. In the sky above the 100-spirit Tao Peak, celestial light bloomed and swept across, dazzling everyone's eyes. Immediately after, a huge celestial diagram extended from beneath Hu Qianqiu's feet and stretched across the void. Yunbao Zhuxing and the others were trapped in the celestial diagram, and the space was sealed by Hu Qianqiu's Tao will. The commotion immediately attracted attention. On the Tao Peak, countless disciples looked over. Seeing the people facing each other in the deity painting, they all had strange looks on their faces. Was this a battle of magical powers? At this moment, Hu Qianqiu's expression was agitated. His 8 emperor's rings were all activated. His long hair danced in the wind, and the emperor's will that permeated the air was extremely intense. Tao characters floated around his body. Qian, Kun, Zhen, Li, Kan. Every Tao character seemed to contain a terrifying array Tao power. Zhu Xing's expression was extremely cold as she looked at Hu Qianqiu. Being within the Tao will of the other party's deity diagram, she could clearly feel the strength of the deity gate's number 1 rising star. Hu Qianqiu's strength was definitely above Zhu Xing's. The sharp aura on his body was not inferior to Sikong Shu's and Lian Han's. Hu Qianqiu was an 8th-stage Tao affirmation realm cultivator. He had yet to step into the Imperial Master realm, but he was already able to bring about such intense pressure. It could be seen that his talent was very high. Even in the entire 5 realms, he could be considered one of the top. Bauer was also feeling the will of the way that permeated the space. Her slightly pale face revealed a different kind of beauty under the illumination of the celestial light. She could feel that the celestial painting resonated with Hu Qianqiu's will of the emperor. It was as if this place was outside of the great Tao and had become a matrix territory. The characters of the way that floated around Hu Qianqiu had not yet fallen into the matrix, but they had already brought pressure to everyone. One could imagine that when the Tao character entered the formation and activated the power of the immortal diagram, the pressure would be even more intense. Honestly speaking, not to mention that Bao had yet to recover from the martial arts exchange, even if she was at her peak state, it would not be easy to win against Hu Qianqiu, unless she directly used the evil power of her bloodline. Make your move. Let me experience the strength of Denda's bloodline. Even if I lose to you, I, Hu Qianqiu, will gladly accept it. Hu Qianqiu said. As the successor of the immortal sect, he represented the face of the immortal sect. But if he lost to Denda's daughter, Hu Qianqiu felt that he could completely accept it. Yunbao was known as unparalleled in the world, so even if he lost, he would lose with dignity. When he finished speaking, Hu Qianqiu shouted softly. His body once again released a circle of magnificent Tao light. It was as if a huge circle had fallen into the deity diagram and overlapped with the will of Tao. At this moment, the deity diagram appeared, and the 8 gates appeared at the same time. Qian, Kun, Zhen, Li, Kan. Tao characters flew out and fell into the 8 gates. The deity diagram and the formation diagram operated at the same time. The light on Hu Qianqiu's body became extremely bright, and his aura reached its peak. Qianqiu, you're serious? Su Qing exclaimed in shock. Hu Qianqiu had unleashed both his sovereign spirit and the supreme Tao techniques of the Hu clan. Li Lufeng's expression also changed. She could faintly feel a power that was comparable to Sikong Shu and Lian Han from the number 1 disciple of the Celestial Gate. That was the pressure of a monarch lord. No, the 2 sides were different. In comparison, the current Hu Qianqiu's Tao intent was even purer than Lian Han's and Sikong Shu's. It was hard to imagine how powerful the Tao intent this person could unleash would be once he stepped into the Emperor Master realm. Perhaps at that time, first seat Fenghua and first seat Golden Dew might not be Hu Qianqiu's match. Su Qing and Quan Qian were only slightly weaker than Hu Qianqiu. The celestial gate of the Western world was indeed not to be underestimated. "I'll be your opponent," Zhu Xing said solemnly. He stepped forward and stood in front of Bao. Bao Er's condition was not good, and her body had not recovered. It was not suitable for her to fight with others. Hu Qianqiu glanced at Zhu Xing indifferently. He did not say anything more. His eyes focused on Zhu Xing. Suddenly, the deity diagram and 8 gates Tao formation under everyone's feet began to operate. 2 layers of light were released, and an incomparably turbulent power rolled out from within. The word Zhen suddenly changed to Zhu Xing's position. In an instant, Zhu Xing felt a suppressive force. Her body did not listen to her commands. She was imprisoned in place, unable to move. Even her divine soul was suppressed by an invisible force. "You are still not enough." Hu Qianqiu was not interested in Zhu Xing. His gaze fell on Bauer as if waiting for her to make a move. "Phew!" Bauer slowly exhaled. "The power of the celestial gate Tao formation is indeed worthy of its reputation. I have seen it today. I admit defeat." Hu Qianqiu's sword-like eyebrows gradually knitted together. Admit defeat? Without even fighting, she directly admitted defeat? He came from afar, not to help the 100 Spirits lineage fight against the War Immortal Guards, but to see the elegance of Denda's daughter. Yun Bao was actually so perfunctory? Then I will not be polite. Hu Qianqiu's expression changed. His hand seals intertwined. Under the guidance of the Emperor's will, the deity diagram and Tao formation began to operate at the same time. The space became chaotic. The sky and earth spun, and streaks of turbulent air currents flew and wreaked havoc. Suddenly, a beam of sword light was born from the deity light. One sword turned into 10,000 swords, arranged into a terrifying sword formation, and stabbed towards Bao. Danger! Zhu Xing was frozen in place. She could not move. She could not help Bao. At this moment, Li Lufeng grabbed Su Cheng's sleeve tightly. His eyes were filled with pleading. Only Su Cheng could stop Hu Qianqiu. How could Su Cheng not understand Li Lufeng's intentions? However, if he acted, he would definitely strangle his relationship with Hu Qianqiu. He knew Hu Qianqiu too well. He would not stop until he achieved his goal. As he hesitated, the sword formation flew past with the 10,000 swords. The surging radiance was already in front of Bao, about to swallow her. "Are you still not going to act?" Hu Qianqiu's emperors will firmly controlled the sword formation. At this moment, he was also hesitating. If Yun Bao did not retaliate, this battle would be meaningless. Moreover, Taoist Master Yun Ro was extremely protective. If Yun Bao was injured, her mother would be enraged. Even the Celestial Sect Master would not be able to save her son. Right at this moment, a stranger arrived uninvited from within the immortal formation that emanated intense radiance, and he actually disregarded the energy of Tao insight that erupted from Hu Qianqiu as his figure slowly descended before Yun Bao with his back facing Hu Qianqiu and the myriad of flying sword lights. Then, this person waved his sleeve behind him. Boom! A majestic and boundless emperor's will surged like an ancient river. It turned the deity diagram upside down. Under his attack, the 10,000 swords were destroyed. The Tao characters exploded one after another. The diagram shattered into a net. With a whoosh, it turned into foam and dissipated. Hu Qianqiu, who was releasing Tao will to maintain the operation of the deity diagram, felt as if he was being swept away by an ancient flood. His soul was violently shaken, as if it wanted to tear his soul into pieces. Along with Su Cheng and Li Lufeng, they were swept upside down like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves. The entire world became peaceful. "Why didn't you retaliate?" The newcomer looked at Yun Bao. His tall figure stood there. He was a head taller than Bao. Comparing the two, this scene made Bao look very small. Bao looked at him. His face was sharp like a knife. His silver hair swayed in the wind. He was arrogant, noble, and had an innate emperor's aura. In his temperament there was a special perseverance. It was as if he was a reef that would never be broken by the waves. He gave people a natural sense of security. Yun Bao's soul trembled. This face overlapped with a certain person in her childhood memories. It awakened the story buried in her heart. Drip. Tears flowed down her pale face. Bao only looked at him quietly. She did not say anything. She did not know how to address him. Dende? Or father? It seemed that when she faced him, she did not feel the slightest bit of a father. She only felt very sad. The space fell silent. The scene froze under the gaze of the father and daughter. But standing in this silent world, Zhu Xing, who was at the side, was scared out of his wits. His body and mind were trembling non-stop. Qin Hao ignored Hu Qianqiu's Dao intent and appeared silently. With a simple wave of his hand, he made the arrogant immortal sect master's son roll out like a watermelon. Moreover, the aura that Qin Hao brought was too strong. It was suffocating. Zhu Xing did not have such a feeling when facing Yun Ro. In the entire 9 veins of the phoenix flower, she had only felt such pressure from phoenix flower sovereign. He didn't need to do anything, nor did he need to say anything. Just by standing there, he was able to make people feel fear and despair. This was the aura of a true expert. Who are you? Hu Qianqiu stopped with great difficulty. With a face full of cuts, he angrily shouted at Qin Hao's back. Qin Hao slowly turned around and looked at the son of the deity sect master with a smile that was not a smile. He said, "You like to fight and especially like to take advantage of people's difficulties?" Hu Qianqiu and Qin Hao looked at each other. With just one look, he felt as if his soul had been pierced through. The anger and courage in his heart instantly vanished like smoke into thin air. The curses he had prepared could no longer be uttered. "Senior, please forgive me." "Senior." Su Qing panted as he flew over. He stopped in front of Qin Hao and bowed. "I am Su Qing, son of the deity sect master of the Western world, and Hu Qianqiu, son of the deity sect master of the Western world, are under orders to protect the 100 Spirits Island. I wonder what is the relationship between Senior and Miss Bao. If we have offended Senior, please forgive us." Qin Hao's aura was too strong. Although he looked young, Su Qing did not think that he was a commander. He could be an expert on the same level as their father. "Are you allowed to call her Miss Bao?" Qin Hao lifted his chin slightly. Relying on his height, he looked down at Su Qing. At this moment, he deliberately released his emperor's aura. He watched as Su Qing's body trembled faster and faster. It was as if he would be paralyzed in the next moment. Qin Hao smiled. He stepped forward, past Su Qing, and walked towards Hu Qianqiu. His daughter was bullied. He had to ask for an explanation. "You? What do you want to do? I am warning you. I am from the Western world immortal sect." Hu Qianqiu subconsciously retreated. A simple wave of his hand destroyed his Dao. He knew that this person was ridiculously strong. He was definitely not his match. The son of the Western world immortal sect's cripple who? Qin Hao stood in front of Hu Qianqiu. He also relied on his height to look down at him. That emperor's aura that almost made Su Qing collapse enveloped Hu Qianqiu again. "Cripple who? No, 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 Hu Shanzong is my family's old ancestor." Hu Qianqiu directly faced Qin Hao's emperor's aura. The pressure suddenly increased. He could not even speak properly. "Oh, your family's old ancestor. Do you know why he is crippled?" Qin Hao asked. Hu Qianqiu was startled. This matter was taboo in the family. His father had sternly warned all the descendants of the family to not talk about the old ancestor's leg injury. Otherwise, there would be severe punishment. However, Hu Qianxiu did know a little about this matter. He did not know the specific reason, but it seemed to be related to Dendi. Because of this, Hu Qianxiu heard that Yunbao was Dendi's descendant. Therefore, he came from an immortal sect to ask for advice. I had someone beat his leg, Qin Hao said. Chapter 1902. When he was young, he wandered the 3,000 small Dao realms and inevitably clashed with others. When he was roaming the West world, he was lucky enough to meet Qin Hao's group. First, he was defeated by Qin Hao. Then, he was crippled by Qing Qing and Yu Feng, resulting in a permanent limb defect. Under the divine Dao, the damage to the emperor's body was irreversible. For example, the injury on Weiwei's forearm couldn't be healed. Unless one obtained the opportunity of the great Dao, like Li Wanji and Lin Feng, who forged the divine earth Dao body, the body wouldn't be damaged. Otherwise, once crippled, they would live forever until they ascended to the divine realm. This was the tragedy of the mortal world's martial artists. No matter how high their cultivation was and how strong their soul was, they still couldn't avoid the fatal weakness of the body. However, Weiwei was now cultivating a divine palace emperor art passed down by Qin Hao. She could use the abstruse emperor Dao will to form the missing forearm. Therefore, she looked the same as before. However, there would be consumption in the process, which would accelerate the burning of her lifespan. Although the emperor art made her whole, there would be drawbacks. This was the price she had to pay. It wasn't a big problem. As Qin Hao recovered his peak cultivation and got closer to the divine Dao, he believed that he could use the power of law to reverse the heavenly Dao and help Weiwei regrow her limbs. You! Hu Qianxiu's face was full of shock. His panic was gradually replaced by shock. His fingers trembled as he reached forward. He couldn't believe what Qin Hao said. Only a few direct members of the family knew the reason why Patriarch Hu was crippled. Hu Qianxiu heard from his father that the Patriarch had a dispute with Dendi. Now, Qin Hao said that he was the one who crippled the Patriarch's leg. This person was Dendi. How could Hu Qianxiu believe this? After all, 20 years ago, the battle tower had shaken the 5 realms with that single palm strike. Under that single palm strike, the Pill Emperor, his wife, and the Eastern Seas Empress Yue had all been reduced to ashes. They didn't die. How was this possible? Not only was Hu Qianxiu shocked out of his wits, Su Qing, Li Lufeng, and Zhu Xing all opened their eyes in disbelief. At this time, Yunbao Er's body trembled violently. The vague memories that had been sealed in the depths of her heart when she was a child came back like a tide. The scenes replayed again and again, and the fragments became clearer and clearer. In the end, it stopped at the top of the sky stairway, where Shao Han and the Elixir Emperor combined their swords and attacked the battle tower at the same time. In the end, the two figures were covered by the grand destructive palm. Voila! The fragments in her mind shattered, and her soul seemed to have shattered along with them. A heavy blow suddenly appeared behind Bao'er's head. At that time, she was knocked unconscious by Yun Ro's Emperor Qi. But now, the same feeling swept over her again. It was as if she had experienced the scene of her life and death separation with Shao Han in the God Burial Valley once again. She couldn't help but cover her face with her hands and cry bitterly. Since you like to show off, I will give you the same chance as Cripple Hu. Come, let this emperor experience the power of the immortal sex Dao formation. I believe that after a few hundred years, the Hu clan's Dao formation will be stronger in your hands than Cripple Hu's. Qin Hao spoke with a majestic battle intent. The majestic and flawless emperor intent suppressed Hu Qianxiu's head. As Bao'er's cries got louder, the pressure got stronger. Hu Qianxiu's face was filled with fear. He couldn't control his body and kept retreating. Fight with Dendi? He must be tired of living. It might be possible that they were born in the same era, but it was just a possibility. Hu Qianxiu talked big, but when he faced Dendi, he would have been crushed by Qin Hao's Emperor aura. He didn't want to end up like his ancestor, crippled for the rest of his life. Make your move, Qin Hao said with a majestic voice. Where was the courage just now? Where was that arrogant aura? Did he think that he was no longer in this world? He dared to come to the 100 Spirits Islands to vent his anger on the little princess of the Daqin Empire. This immortal sect was really bold. Cripple who had forgotten the pain after the scar healed. He really didn't teach his grandson well. I am not Senior's match. I admit defeat. Hu Qianqiu's body was shaking like a sieve. What courage! He just wanted to close his eyes and return to the immortal sect in the next moment. He realized that coming here was a mistake. Admit defeat? Qin Hao's face was instantly filled with displeasure. The slightest change in his emotions caused the entire 100 Spirits Island peak to become extremely oppressive. He said in a low voice, "You haven't even fought yet, and you're already admitting defeat. You're being so perfunctory with me. Did Cripple Hu teach you this?" Cripple Hu, Cripple Hu. Hu Qianqiu's eyes were filled with tears. Qin Hao's domineering aura had forced him into a corner. He was on the verge of crying as he kept repeating the words, Cripple Hu. It was as though he was going to be described as a reflection of himself. He didn't have any of the demeanor of the young master of an immortal sect. If you aren't going to make a move, then this emperor won't be courteous. Qin Hao slowly raised his palm. Traces of Dao flames glowed with a dark red light. It was as though they could penetrate the enemy's heart. The fresh blood that flowed on his hand was extremely impactful. I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to make things difficult for Yun Bao. I just wanted to see her talent and the Emperor Dao laws she controlled. I didn't really have any intentions. Hu Qianqiu's legs were trembling violently. His face was filled with tears of disappointment. Even if Qin Hao didn't appear, the Dao sword in the array wouldn't be able to pierce Bao Er's body. He was speaking the truth. I see. Alright, show me the immortal diagram Dao array again. I didn't see it clearly just now. Show it again, and I will let you go back to the immortal sect. Qin Hao's expression calmed down. Hu Qianqiu looked at Su Qing with tears in his eyes. Seeing Su Qing nodding at him like a chick pecking at rice, Hu Qianqiu was instantly filled with humiliation. He finally regained his composure. A layer of Dao array immortal light bloomed from his body. But at this moment, Qin Hao raised his palm and pointed. The red lotus tyrannical fire turned into a sharp ray of light that pierced into Hu Qianqiu's forehead. There was a loud bang. The emperor intent that could topple mountains and overturn seas entered his soul. Hu Qianqiu's body trembled violently. His limbs, bones, organs, and meridians all felt an extremely intense burning sensation at the same time. Waves of Dao fire flowed in his body, as though it wanted to burn through his flesh. The pain was indescribable. He couldn't help but let out a hoarse howl. "Show me the Dao array," Qin Hao said with a sullen expression. His tone was undeniable, and fully displayed Denda's authority. "I can't release it." Hu Qianqiu was in so much pain that his entire body spasmed. He couldn't help but curl up in midair. If not for Qin Hao's emperor intent restraining him, he would have fallen straight down. Qin Hao looked expressionlessly at this Hu Jr. Logically, he shouldn't have treated Hu Qianqiu like this. But this guy took advantage of Bao Er's weakness, and his mood was affected by the situation in the Phoenix Flower sect. He wanted to see Bao Er's talent ability, completely ignoring Bao Er's feelings. Alright, Qin Hao could only let Hu Qianqiu have a taste of his own medicine. "Senior, please be merciful. We were wrong. On account of the 100 Spirits Island Lord, please let Qianqiu go." Su Qing looked at Hu Qianqiu who was in so much pain. He couldn't bear to see Hu Qianqiu unable to use his talent. "Merciful, I was merciful enough. I even felt that it was too light." Qin Hao didn't budge. He always took lives directly. He had already considered Yun Ro's face by not killing Hu Qianqiu. Please be merciful. At this moment, beams of emperor light shot out from the Dao Peak's main hall. Instantly, loud whistling sounds could be heard. Island Lord Yun Ro, Sect Lord Su's wife, 100 Spirits Island's upper echelons, and the immortal sect's Dao protectors all appeared and gathered here. Seeing Hu Qianqiu being suppressed by Qin Hao's emperor intent and rolling around in pain in the air, the immortal sect's experts couldn't help but change their expressions. 1. Waves of emperor aura descended from the sky. Then, Shouwuk, Shaohan, and Mu Yue all appeared and blocked the immortal sect. They had followed Qin Hao here and witnessed everything that had happened. However, none of them tried to stop Qin Hao. Especially Shaohan, who stared at Hu Qianqiu with an especially cold expression. This brat from the Hu clan deserved it. Yun Ro was stunned when she saw Qin Hao. Sister Yun Ro, how have you been? Xiao Han retracted the coldness on his face and smiled. Han, are you too? When Xiao Han stood in front of Yun Ro, tears immediately gushed out of her eyes. What happened in the past had left her with great regret and had always been a knot in her heart. Now that she saw Xiao Han safe and sound, even the valiant Yun Ro couldn't help but shed tears. Let's stop here. He came to 100 Spirits and encountered such a thing. What a sin! A graceful and noble figure slowly descended from the sky as Feng Lan spoke faintly. Phoenix Flower Supremacy. The immortal sect and 100 Spirits emperors bowed at the same time. It's over. Su Qing looked at the incomparably outstanding figures. This was the first time he saw such a scene in his life. He silently looked at Hu Qianqiu and felt sorry for the young master of the Hu clan. Hu Qianqiu was arrogant and had been thoroughly taught a lesson today. The war in the north is imminent. Why did supremacy come here? And this? Madame Su's attitude was humble. In front of Feng Lan, she was also a junior. Especially in front of Qin Hao, even Denda's name was taboo. She didn't dare to speak directly. The war immortal guards have all retreated from the north. The 100 Spirits lineage can be relieved. Yun Ro, Yun Xia, come over. Feng Lan looked at Qin Hao. Qin Hao took the lead and walked towards the main hall of the Dao Peak. Shaohan hugged Bao. This dreamlike warm hug made Yun Bao completely lose her composure. The bitterness and loneliness of many years turned into a river of tears that couldn't be stopped. Let's go, Mu Yue said. Shaohan nodded. The two of them held Bao Er's hands and followed behind Dendi and Phoenix Flower Supremacy. Madame Su and Yun Xia didn't dare to mention Hu Qianqiu. They hardened their hearts and left their son Su Qing here. The Emperor Dao elders of the immortal sect didn't immediately follow. Instead, they carefully walked to Hu Qianqiu, who was rolling on the ground. They wanted to try and see if they could resolve it for him. After 6 hours, the flame power in his body will dissipate by itself. Of course, you can help if you want. If you use the Emperor's will and cause the flame power in his body to go berserk, haha, then it will have nothing to do with me. Denda's warning came from the void. Instantly, the elders who were about to move immediately retracted their hands. Their expressions were complicated. They expressed helplessness, sighs, and shook their heads to Hu Qianqiu. They followed the group into the hall. 6 hours was enough. This feeling, they couldn't help even if they wanted to. After everyone left, Su Qing, who was guarding Hu Qianqiu alone, bent down and whispered in Hu Qianqiu's ear, "Be careful." Chapter 1903. Outside the hall, Hu Qianqiu's shouts didn't stop. At this moment, everyone in the hall turned a deaf ear to his shouts. Pairs of eyes were focused on Dendi. This East Continent sovereign's life was filled with legends. Everyone wanted to know how he dodged that palm strike from God Burial Valley. Facing everyone's gazes, Qin Hao briefly explained what happened at God Burial Valley. Back then, other than Yun Ro, Bai Ling, and a few other elders, Most of the people present didn't participate in the opening of the God Burial Valley. He also didn't explain in detail. Qin Hao came here to reunite with Bao. Secondly, he was here to plan for the East Continent's war. He looked at everyone and said, after the battle at Penglai, the Sky Shaker race was removed from the East Sea. Now, the Shuo race is in charge of the entire sea territory. In the north, the setting sun peak has transferred all the battle god guards away. The danger is temporarily alleviated. In the south, the Dao ancestor is overseeing the Dao sect. From the situation, Qin Hao's side had the advantage. Furthermore, the reinforcements he had were far more than these. Zhan Wu has misgivings because of the 3 invitations. He doesn't know where I am. According to his temper, he won't act rashly. He should be quiet for a period of time. However, it won't be for long. I hope that everyone can raise their cultivations while defending their territories, Qin Hao said. Before a great battle, time was extremely precious to everyone. He also didn't dare to guarantee that Zhan Wu was really waiting for him at the setting sun peak. Or maybe, the setting sun battle god would suddenly use his overwhelming lineup to eliminate one of the 3 factions. Who could say for sure? Therefore, the necessary precautions must be taken. Many people's expressions changed. When they heard that the East Sea's Sky Shaker race was destroyed, Yun Ro and Madame Su couldn't help but feel shocked. However, since it came from Denda's mouth, he wouldn't lie to them. As expected of the sovereign of a generation. This method, Madame Su sighed. An overlord force with thousands of years of foundation was destroyed just like that. If it was someone else, it wouldn't be so easy. However, Qin Hao said it as if it was just a casual matter. This was Dendi. 600 years later, he was still able to stir up a storm in the East Continent. In the world, only the current setting sun battle god had the same qualifications and strength. What do you plan to do? Yun Roan asked. If Dendi was defeated. If Dendi. Before I came here, I thought about setting up a large-scale teleportation formation on each of the 9 main islands of the Phoenix Flower sect, the Dao sect and the Penglai sect. The power of the formation can withstand the Dao will of an emperor. This way, no matter where the war immortal guards suddenly descend, we can provide support at any time and avoid being defeated one by one. Qin Hao didn't have enough strength to directly attack Sunset Peak. He needed time to find more helpers. In the meantime, he was worried that Zhan Wu would attack. Dao sect. 9 Phoenix Flower branches. East Sea Shua clan. These 3 major orthodoxies were the 3 important strongholds. However, it wasn't a small matter for the Overlord forces to set up a formation that could support the teleportation of Emperor Dao expert. After all, if they didn't work together, they could use the formation to teleport from one place to another. This was a formation that could teleport Emperor Dao expert. It was basically unstoppable. Therefore, he needed to consult Feng Lan and the other 8 island masters. You should know that the moment Master Feng Qi helped Bao, the fate of the 9 Phoenix Flower branches was already tied to Dendi. No matter what you do, I'll support you. Feng Lan's attitude was very frank. She couldn't reject Qin Hao's decision. She could only do her best to support it. The 9 Phoenix Flower branches were all female disciples. Usually, she wouldn't agree to the teleportation formation. However, things were different now. Since Master Ji Zun agrees, the 100 Spirit branch will cooperate. Yun Ro didn't have any objections. Very well. I'll inform the Dao ancestor later. He'll set up the formation himself to connect the South, North, and East Sea. Qin Hao said. The formation that could support Emperor Dao experts was no joke. Moreover, the time to set it up was very limited. It had to be done by someone who was good at it and had a strong enough cultivation. As for the others, Qin Hao looked at Madame Su. I heard that Madame Su's husband has reached the peak of enlightenment? The immortal sect is involved in the North Territory dispute because of me. If Dende needs it, I'll inform my husband and let him work with the Tao ancestor to set up the formation. Madame Su understood Qin Hao's meaning. Thank you. Also, set up one for the immortal sect. Qin Hao chuckled. This. Madame Su looked at the Emperor Tao elders of the immortal sect. They looked very cautious and shook their heads slightly. Madame Su replied, I need to discuss it with my husband and let him ask the other two sect leaders for their opinions, as well as Ancestor Hu's. I can't make this decision. It was one thing for the immortal sect to help Fenghua, but it was another thing to ally with Qin Hao. The latter was much more serious than the former. It doesn't matter. I'm setting up a formation for your own good. You can tell Cripple Hu that if I lose this battle, Zhan Wu will never let him go. But if I win, I'll fix him back in the same way that I crippled him back then. Qin Hao promised. Madame Su was born in the 100 Spirit Island. Helping Fenghua was her duty as a disciple. If she gave up a formation for the immortal sect, she would undoubtedly be on the same side as Qin Hao. However, since the immortal sect had done it, even if they only helped Fenghua and didn't participate in the feud between Qin Hao and the Sunset Battle Immortal, would Zhan Wu forgive them after the matter? It was impossible. Yun Xia, Bai Ling is a burden to you, Yunro said. Yun Xia shook her head. Senior sister, don't say that. All right, I'll report your thoughts to my husband. As for whether Patriarch Hu dares to do it, I can't guarantee it. He definitely dares to do it for his leg. Qin Hao laughed a few times. He believed that Cripple Hu would make the wisest choice. When the elders of the immortal sect heard Qin Hao's laughter, they all smiled apologetically. Although their smiles were very unnatural, they understood that Dende was the only person in the world who could heal Patriarch Hu's leg. If Dende couldn't do it, there would be no one else in the divine wilderness. What are your chances of winning this battle? Feng Lan asked. As of now, I have no chance of winning. Qin Hao replied. In terms of peak battle strength, the Tao ancestor, Wuk, and Qin Hao were all in the unblemished realm. Even if Feng Lan, who was holding the Dream Branch, was a fake unblemished realm expert, they still had a slim chance of winning against the Sunset Peak. The strength of the three from the battle tower couldn't be underestimated. Besides, there was the Divine Martial Hall on the Sunset Peak. It was said that there were 4 powerful figures at the level of coal distribution in the Divine Martial Hall. In this way, excluding Zhan Wu, the Sunset Peak had 7 unblemished Great Emperors. Qin Hao's side was less than half of the unblemished Great Emperors. It was very dangerous. Zhuiying, Great Emperor of the Zhuiying Sword Palace in the Middle World, had the power to pass the unblemished Great Realm 20 years ago. I believe that 20 years later, he will be in the unblemished Great Realm. At this time, Shouwuk said to Qin Hao, I will find him. He will come. The 5th unblemished Great Emperor. I heard that you have a good relationship with Prince Chun of the Warring States in the Western world. If the Kim people join the battle, they will be a force to be reckoned with. Madame Su said. Jin Chun, well, he is a good person. Unfortunately, the others in the Warring States may not have the courage to join the battle. Qin Hao knew Jin Chun well. If he asked, the other party would definitely come. Of course, it would only be Jin Chun alone. Just like the Immortal Sect, Madame Su helped Fenghua, but the 3 clans of the Immortal Sect might not help Qin Hao. The consequences of the battle with the Sunset Peak were too serious. The Kim people of the Warring States might not dare to come. In contrast, it was more likely to ask Cripple Hu for help. In fact, I have a partner who is stronger than the Kim people. It's the Phoenix Gods. Qin Hao thought of Emperor Jingji. In the burial god relic, it could be seen that the relationship between the Phoenix Gods and the Sunset Peak was not good. Zhan Wu was too strong. A tall tree attracts the wind, just like Qin Hao. If Qin Hao visited the Phoenix Patriarch in person, he might be able to invite this expert. Of course, the chances were slim. Moreover, it was impossible for him to rely on his relationship with senior sister Meowly. If senior sister Meowly was still around, it would be fine, but now that senior sister Meowly was gone, how could the Phoenix god race hand over the lives of their clansmen to Qin Hao just because of this relationship? Although the chances were slim, he could still fight for it. Lu Gui and Ni Xiang once said that the only person in the divine wilderness who could withstand an arrow from the war god was the Phoenix Patriarch. It could be seen that the Phoenix Patriarch's cultivation was amazing. He should be stronger than a Tao ancestor, perhaps on the same level as a Tao ancestor at his peak. If we have the help of the Phoenix clan elder, the gap between us and the Sunset Peak will be greatly reduced. What I am worried about is Han Lingxian. If she interferes. Feng Lan did not continue speaking. Even if she did not say it, everyone knew what the situation would be like. With Daqin and the Sunset Peak, Qin Hao's strength was not enough unless the emperors and lords of the five realms worked together. Even if he invited the Phoenix Patriarch, they would not win the battle. Indeed, it is time. Qin Hao stood up from his seat and let out a long sigh. Yun Ro, Madame Su, and everyone else was stunned. It is time? When? It was puzzling. Qin Hao smiled secretly. It was time to gather the 300 disciples of the Divine Palace. Although he had lost the life slip left by his senior sister and could not accurately find everyone based on the sovereign spirit, he believed that under the call of the Seven Peaks, there would definitely be people who would come. He did not expect any of the patriarchs of his sect to reach the unblemished realm. After all, it would be difficult not to be recognized in the four regions after reaching this realm. They only needed a little help. 300 people. If each sect provided one sovereign, it would be 300. It would be a shocking scene. You can make the decision. I will go back to the Windflower Ancestral Land to inform the other 7 main islands to prepare the array. Feng Lan stood up and said. The sovereign light on her body flowed and she disappeared. I will also return to the Celestial Gate and pass your words to my husband. The final decision will be made by the 3 sect masters. Madame Su bowed and left the hall accompanied by the elders of the Celestial Gate. I am not feeling well. I will leave first. Yunbao glanced at Xiaohan. She seemed to have something to say but was too embarrassed to speak. She turned and left alone. It has been 20 years. Sister Yunro, Bao, I have troubled you. Xiaohan held Yunro's hand tightly. The two looked at each other and smiled, just like before. What are you waiting for? Mu Yue gave Qin Hao a look. Xiaohan deliberately did not respond to Bao, to create an opportunity for Qin Hao. As a father, what was he waiting for? Chapter 1904. Bao had no father to accompany her since she was born. Her father had always been absent in her childhood, adolescence, and rebellious period. This had not only become a knot in Bao's heart, but also a great regret for Qin Hao. She was lonely, wronged, and helpless. When she needed care and comfort the most, Qin Hao was not by her side. Now, her father had appeared out of nowhere. It was not just a few words that could bring them closer. I'll go see her, Qin Hao said to Xiaohan, his tone faintly nervous. Go, Xiaohan said gently. She believed that Qin Hao could do it. I'll go back to the Sword Palace, Wuk said. Qin Hao nodded. Remember to say hello to the Sword Emperor for me. They wanted to attack the Sunset Peak and rescue Vivian's father, Xing and Yao Lao. The Juying Sword Emperor would be a powerful helper. With Wuk there, this matter could be done. The two walked out of the hall together. Wuk transformed into Sword Will and pierced through the void to leave. Qin Hao silently followed behind Bao. They did not get too close. There was always some distance between them to avoid pressuring Bao. In this palace corridor, the father and daughter walked at the same time without speaking. Bao stopped, so did Qin Hao. Bao started walking, and Qin Hao immediately continued to follow. The scene was very quiet. At this moment, Qin Hao was like a loyal guard following behind a princess. The two maintained a silent, tacit understanding. Bao Er looked back. What did he mean by following her? She had wanted to talk to her mother about her worries and regain the feelings they had when they were young. However, this man had strangely followed her without saying a word. Suddenly, the Emperor's light flowed on Bao Er's body. She took a step and turned into a light shadow that swept across the sky from the main peak. The honest uncle said that when she was in a bad mood, she should not trap herself in a small room. She should go to an open place to empty herself. Therefore, she was not going to return to her room. Qin Hao raised his head and looked at Bao Er's back. Then, he took a step forward. Water-Wind God increased its speed slightly and followed her like a shadow. It was just like the scene in the corridor just now. Bao Er frowned. Was there no end to this? A layer of flower light appeared around her body and surrounded her. Under the flower fairy art, countless flower petals fell from the sky. Bao Er was bathed in them, and her speed in the air became faster and faster. She was like a beam of light, and in the blink of an eye, she crossed the boundless space and left the 100 Spirit Islands. Qin Hao used the fleetfoot stride and walked freely in the void. He was as graceful as an immortal. He could keep up with Bao Er's speed without any effort. Watching his daughter use the Emperor technique of the Phoenix flower lineage, he nodded inwardly. His ability wasn't bad. For Bao Er to be able to use the Phoenix flower fairy art so exquisitely, she must have put in a lot of effort in private. However, it couldn't be compared to his Water-Wind God stride. Qin Hao could feel that the essence of the Phoenix flower fairy art was more about illusions. When this art was used, it would lower the intensity of one's aura and allow the martial artist to integrate with the great Tao of space. It would make it difficult for the enemy to capture one's figure from one's aura. Even if he didn't look at the martial technique in the art, he knew that it would be unpredictable footwork. This was his Water-Wind God stride's entry-level technique. After advancing to the next level, when he cultivated the Water-Wind flash or above, the power of the fleetfoot stride would increase by leaps and bounds. When he moved, he would be as silent as water and as fast as the wind. It would have more killing power in actual combat and would push the martial artist's speed to the limit. Therefore, compared to the fleetfoot stride, the flower fairy art was a little gaudy. Of course, Qin Hao didn't have the intention to compete with Bao Er. He was just thinking that he should let Bao Er cultivate a more exquisite movement martial technique and inherit his father's legacy. Two figures flew across the vast island, one in front and one behind. The gorgeous Emperor's shadow and the Emperor's aura shocked the people below. Soon, the father and daughter entered the North Sea. Bao Er stood on a huge reef. She placed her hands in front of her and let out a carefree cry at the endless sea. Following her cry, the sea water rolled and a huge creature jumped out from the bottom of the sea. It leaped for thousands of feet, its whole body shining with green light. Under the sunlight, its huge mouth, which looked like a dragon's head, let out a deep roar. The oppressive aura was extremely strong. The ancient dragon whale appeared. Its huge body swayed in front of Bao Er, stirring up huge waves. In the past, it would carry Bao Er deeper into the sea. But today it didn't get close. The dragon whale wandered in front of Bao Er. Its huge eyes stared at the other figure on the reef. It felt a very dangerous aura from this human. Judging from the situation, he seemed to be an elder. He didn't show any threat to Bao Er. The dragon whale couldn't figure out the relationship between the two. The best choice was to wait and see. Ancient dragon whale. Qin Hao was slightly surprised. The North Sea actually had a descendant of the dragon race. How rare. Since the Xianyuan royal family in the southern region was destroyed, the 8-winged black dragon was the only true dragon that Qin Hao had seen. He thought it was the only one left in the world. He didn't expect there to be a dragon in the North Sea. A long time ago, my mother and I went to the God-burying island. We met Uncle Dragon on the way. After a few days, Yunro finally made it submit and become my pet. Bao-er recalled the past and smiled sweetly. Uncle Dragon? Qin Hao's mouth twitched. Very good. An emperor-level pet, and a powerful sea dragon. It was a natural ruler of the sea. Not bad. Why are you following me? Bao-er turned and looked at Qin Hao. They looked at each other seriously for the first time. Bao-er was already an adult. She was now slender and elegant, and was of marriageable age. Although Qin Hao had a head full of silver hair, his appearance was still handsome. Both of them had extraordinary temperaments, so from the scene, it was very difficult for outsiders to think that they were father and daughter. They were more like brother and sister, or perhaps lovers. Qin Hao didn't answer. Why was he following her? Did he need a reason? No, he didn't. I was born in the Phoenix Flower Country and grew up in the 9 bloodlines. The North Sea is my home. After more than 20 years, my feelings for my mother are very faint. I don't have any feelings for my father at all, Bao-er said. Bao-er said. In her world, there had never been a father. I'm very sorry. Qin Hao lowered his head slightly. He was tired of running around all his life. When it came to his daughter, he didn't fulfill his responsibility. So, I don't need a father. Do you understand? Bao-er's eyes were misty. Perhaps it was a little hurtful to say this, but she really didn't have any feelings for Qin Hao. She couldn't act like a spoiled child in front of a father who appeared out of thin air. I don't need a father, Qin Hao whispered. He felt a stab of pain in his heart. Then, he smiled. A ball of divine light appeared in his hand. He extended it forward and handed it to Bao. For you. Bao looked over. In Qin Hao's hand was a folding fan, but it was no ordinary item. It emitted a vast power. When it appeared, it was as if the North Sea had come alive. Bao could faintly hear countless fairies singing. All the spiritual qi in the world became incomparably lively and began to gather here. Dream Branch. Phoenix Flower Prime carried a divine weapon, and those who held the Dream Branch were invincible in the North Territory. Bao's eyes were filled with shock. She had participated in the 9 lineages fallen martial competition in order to seize the Dream Branch and become the next Phoenix Flower Goddess. Now, Phoenix Flower Prime's divine soldier was actually in his hands. A gift, she said. Bao revealed a faint cold smile. Dendu was really generous. He could take Phoenix Flower Prime's divine soldier as he wished and give it away as he wished. Bao couldn't help but think of another face, the Battle Tower. The Battle God Temple seemed to have the same style of doing things. If they wanted something, they would take it for themselves. No one in the 5 realms dared to disobey. Now, what was the difference between Dendi and the Sunset Battle God? But she was no longer the naive little girl who didn't know much about the world. Did he think that a mere gift could make her happy? Even if it wasn't a candy or a bouquet of flowers, but the strongest divine soldier in the North Territory, she still wouldn't accept it. It's not a gift. You deserve it. Phoenix Mist entrusted me to give it to you. If you want to become the goddess, after the North Territory stabilizes, we can hold the coronation ceremony at any time. At that time, I will invite the 5 realms emperors to attend the ceremony. Qin Hao's tone was a little humble. No need. Bao flatly refused. Phoenix Flower Prime sincerely entrusted it to her, or was she threatened by Dendi? Bao participated in the 9 channels martial competition to prove herself to Yunro. She wasn't a useless person in the eyes of Island Lord Yunro. Now that Xiao Han had returned, his mother was still the best. Hence, it didn't matter whether she had Dream Branch or not. She didn't lack anything. She just wanted a family member. That way, she wouldn't feel lonely in this world. Prime promised to support you in taking back the Sunset Peak. The Dream Branch can be used more in her hands. If you want to win against the Sunset Battle God, you better return the Dream Branch to her. Bao coldly said. I didn't fight against the Sunset Battle God to take back the Sunset Peak or for fame. There are many things you don't understand. Qin Hao hurriedly explained. If he didn't attack, he wouldn't be able to survive. Western Liang, Northern Territory, and the Southern Territory, including the Phoenix Flower 9 channels, would disappear from this world along with Dendi. That included Bao. I don't want to hear it. Leave. Bao turned her back to Qin Hao and said. Qin Hao wanted to say something but stopped. He lowered his head and said, I didn't participate in your growth. When you needed a father, I wasn't by your side. This is a regret I can never make up for. Dream Branch was indeed entrusted to me by Feng Lan. You won the chief disciple of the 9 channels martial competition, so it's only right. Bao, I'm not a competent father. Perhaps I won't be a good father in the future, but I have to let you understand that from the moment you and your mother appeared before me, I made a decision. I can give up everything for my daughter without hesitation and spare no effort, including this life of mine. To me, you are my entire world. Qin Hao didn't know how to be a good father. He didn't have any experience, but his words were true. Silently taking back the Dream Branch, Qin Hao saw that Bao was still indifferent, as if there was an unrelated person behind her. Qin Hao took a deep breath and continued. In the Dao formation, you didn't fight back against Hu Qianqiu because you were resisting the power of your bloodline. Bao, you have to know that everything in the world exists for a reason. Power isn't divided into good and evil. Good and evil are people. It's like your other talents and is also a part of you. I hope, next time, don't stand there stupidly and let others hit you. My heart will ache. After saying these words, Qin Hao turned and flew away. No matter how cold Bao was, he wouldn't give up. As he said, the moment he knew that his daughter was born, he was prepared to give up everything. He would work hard to learn how to be a good father. So, you've always been by my side. Feeling Qin Hao leave, Bao's tear-filled face blossomed into a sunny smile. She remembered Qin Hao's voice. It had appeared in her dreams more than once. It was especially clear on the day of the 9 channels martial competition. Chapter 1905. His daughter couldn't accept a strange father after being absent for decades. Although Qin Hao was a little disappointed that Bao refused to accept the Mengji, he wouldn't force her. He could wait. In the future, he would have a lot of time to accompany his daughter and protect her silently. In fact, Bao's refusal to accept the Mengji seemed to have a deeper meaning. She was right. In the current situation, the Mengji's power in Feng Lan's hands was far greater than that of Denda's daughter. In order to attack Sunset Peak, it was more effective to use a powerful magic weapon on a suitable person. No matter what Bao's motive was, whether it was for the 9 veins of the Phoenix Flower or for Qin Hao, his daughter's way of doing things was very considerate. She wasn't as cold as she seemed. After talking with Feng Lan and Yun Ro, Qin Hao immediately sent a message to the Taoist ancestor. He started to set up the teleportation formations of the 3 major orthodoxies. The Taoist ancestor, Bo Changji, would do it personally. With the north border as the center, the 9 islands, the southern border Dao sect, and the Shua clan of the East Sea would build more than 20 formations capable of carrying Emperor Dao experts. The 3 sides would act as each other's horns and could support each other at any time. Madame Su brought Qin Hao's message back to the Immortal sect. The only ancestor left in the Immortal sect, Lame Hu, didn't give Dendi a clear answer. Starting a war with Sunset Peak would involve too much. Once they agreed, there would be no way out. Either one side would die or the other would die. As the ancestor of the Immortal sect, Lame Hu had to be extra careful. However, he sent 3 strong helpers to assist Bo Changji in building the teleportation formation. This time, Not only did Madame Su's husband come, but Hu Qianqiu's father and the head of the Quan clan also came. The immortal sect was originally good at formations in the west border. Many of their methods were similar to the Taoist sect, which saved the Taoist ancestor a lot of effort. From this point of view, one could see Lame Hu's attitude. Except for himself, the three sect masters in charge of the immortal sect came together to convey the immortal sect's intention to Dendi. However, except for the three sect masters, there wasn't a single soldier. Even the Taoist experts who were assigned to Madame Su were ordered back by Lame Hu's order. Qin Hao understood what Cripple Hu meant. Cripple Hu was planning to observe the situation and hadn't made up his mind. Qin Hao wasn't in a hurry. He believed that when the Jueying Sword Emperor and the Phoenix Clan ancestor appeared in the North region, Cripple Hu would definitely come uninvited. 10 days later, the teleportation portals in the three orthodoxies were completed. Sect leader Hu, sect leader Su, and sect leader Quan didn't leave. At this moment, on the 100 Spirits Island, a circle of dazzling light appeared above the dojo, and a yin-yang diagram with boundless emperor will slowly fell into it. Immediately, it stirred up endless rays of light, and a mysterious and unfathomable Tao might surged from it. Outside the Tao sanctum, Qin Hao, the Tao ancestor, the three immortal sect masters, Paragon Phoenix Flower, Yun Ro, and many island lords were there. They looked at the huge Tao array that was circulating with yin-yang radiance on the Tao sanctum with solemn expressions. This array was combined with the Tao ancestors' power of reversing yin and yang, as well as the immortal sect's celestial art. It was also integrated with the will of Qin Hao, Wuk, Feng Lan, and many other unblemished cultivators. Back in the Divine Palace, the Seven Peak Venerables, led by great ancestor Yun Yi, worked together to activate a supreme illusion array. This array could derive the power of heaven and earth and form a universe of its own. When the disciples of the Divine Palace entered the array, they could open a strange door of martial arts according to the will of the way contained in the array. They could walk in and train themselves. It was both real and illusory, with thousands of changes. With the cultivation of Qin Hao and the others, they naturally couldn't compare with the Seven Peak Venerables of the Divine Palace. Although they were only bodies of obsession, their nirvana-level power still hadn't dissipated. Qin Hao, the Tao ancestor, Wu Kei, and Feng Lan were unable to achieve the strength of the formation energy of the other party, and it was impossible for them to create the spirit of the formation. Even so, the people who entered the formation could still improve their individual strength through the tempering of Tao insight. Strength was exactly what was needed at the moment. Xiaohan, Yun Ro, and Wei Wei. Holy Emperor Jiang, Ancestor Li, and Great Ancestor Wan Hai. These were all extremely powerful cultivators who had proven their way. Among them, Wei Wei, Ancestor Li, and Great Ancestor Wan Hai were very close to the unblemished realm. Through the experience of the unblemished will of the Wei in the array, they might be able to break through. Many people could go in and train. Even the descendants of Bao'er, Hu Qianqiu, and Su Qing could enter. A few days ago, news came from Xianlong Mountain. For some unknown reason, Zhuge Xiu, the commander of Sunset Peak and one of the most powerful divine generals under the command of the Sunset War God, was seriously injured. Feng Lan's gaze fell on the array, and the will of the emperor was absorbed into it. She continued, the Xianlong lineage was slaughtered by Meng Xiang, and their orthodoxy was destroyed. The Xianlong emperor escaped with injuries and fled to the Daqin Empire to seek refuge. Now, he was recruited by Han Lingxian and was given the position of imperial advisor. This happened very suddenly. Zhuge Xiu, a unblemished emperor, fought with the Xianlong emperor for no reason. The Xianlong holy man's cultivation was also very shocking, and he was evenly matched with Zhuge Xiu. After Meng Xiang appeared, he was able to escape from the two of them. If it didn't happen in real life, no one would have believed it. The waters in the East Continent were too deep. Feng Lan couldn't understand why Zhuge Xiu would appear in Qianlong Mountain. Qianlong Mountain was located in an extremely remote island in the North Territory. It wasn't prosperous, and the Qianlong holy man wasn't very famous. He was just an ordinary emperor. But in the end, this person's cultivation was so strong. Qin Hao's gaze moved, and he pondered for a moment. He also couldn't figure out the reason. What secrets were hidden in Qianlong Mountain? With Zhan Wu's personality, unless he was in mortal danger, he wouldn't care about the East Continent at all. Even when the Tao ancestor woke up from his deep slumber and used the power of his talent to move the stars and reach the sunset peak with a single thought, judging from Zhan Wu's performance at that time, he was still unperturbed. At most, he only sent the war tower to lead the troops to the south. But now, the sunset battle god sent Zhuge Xiu to Qianlong Mountain. It was clear that Zhan Wu's attitude was very sharp, and he seemed to be prepared to kill everyone. Unfortunately, he still underestimated the power of the Qianlong holy man. Elder, what do you think? Qin Hao spoke to the holy ancestor. Bo Changji's brows furrowed, and a trace of doubt appeared on his face. He shook his head and said, "Heavens cannot be revealed. When the time comes, you will understand." Okay. Qin Hao was speechless and didn't pursue the matter. The holy ancestor had to pay a huge price every time he peeked into heaven's will. His furrowed brows just now probably meant that the price was too high and beyond what he could bear. No matter what the reason is, it seems to be good news for us, Feng Lan said. With Zhuge Xiu severely injured, the Sunset Peak basically lost one of its 3 great commanders. When attacking the Sunset Peak, the pressure would be reduced. It is indeed good news. Qin Hao nodded. Zhuge Xiu's power was the weakest among the 3 great commanders. If they really fought, 2 Zhuge Xius might not be able to defeat 1 Kuei Han. But after all, he was an unblemished martial saint. Now that he was severely injured, it would be impossible for him to recover in less than 100 years. Zhan Wu couldn't help him. On the other hand, it was the Qianlong holy man. What secrets or treasures did he have that caused Zhan Wu to be wary? The Qianlong holy man fled to Daqin to seek protection from Han Lingxian. From this, it seems that her relationship with the sunset battle god isn't as good as the rumors say. At this moment, sect leader Su of the Celestial Sect said. In the battle of the Qianlong Dao Mountain, Zhuge Xiu's injury was indeed beneficial to Qin Hao. But from the current situation, things weren't that simple. Everyone also understood that Empress Lingxuan's protection of the person the Sunset Battle God wanted to kill would undoubtedly cause a rift between the Sunset Peak and Daqin. This made them feel more secure. If they fought with the War God Temple and Daqin didn't provide reinforcements, then the chances of victory would undoubtedly increase. The Qianlong holy man is hiding an extremely important secret. We have to be careful. Qin Hao thought. Of course, he didn't want to let the Qianlong holy man go, but he wanted to guard against Qingji Han. He didn't care much before, but after hearing sect leader Su's words, Qin Hao started to worry. No matter what they do, it's best that Han Lingxian and the War God Temple fight before we set off. Now that the formation is completed, let's go in and train. Li Xiuxing said. In the battle with Ancestor Yun Tian, Li Xiuxing had suffered heavy injuries and had yet to fully recover. However, Qin Hao had healed most of his Dao bones and inner palace injuries. Only the layer of cloud energy that remained in his body needed to be removed by Li Xiuxing himself. Qin Hao could only help up to this point. If he forcefully removed it, it would definitely affect Li Xiuxing to a certain extent. I'll go in and try, Shouwuk said. Sword will circled around his body and turned into a ray of golden sword radiance that soared into the sky. It pierced into the light of the formation and followed the flow of the huge yin-yang diagram. Very soon, everyone on the training ground could no longer feel the aura of the true polarity sword master. Buzz. Buzz, buzz. On the 100 spirits training ground, as Showuk entered the formation, the light of the formation started to become restless. Faintly, everyone could hear the sound of swords clashing. The sound was coming from the formation. The formation contained the Tao ancestors' power of reversing yin and yang, Qin Hao's talent of 3 souls, and he had secretly injected a wisp of divine path nomological will into it. Feng Lan had also used the Dream Branch to infuse the North Territory's power and her own Emperor's technique. This included Wuk's all forms of sword will, which was the combination of the strengths of 4 unblemished great emperors. Qin Hao had learned formation techniques at the Divine Palace's Yun-Yi Peak and had seen the structure and principle of this formation. The Tao ancestor and sect leader Su were also very good at this technique. They communicated with each other and quickly created the formation orb. Therefore, even though the true polarity sword master had entered personally, he still faced a lot of pressure. At this time, the formation light in front of everyone's eyes was rippling more and more violently, and the sound of swords in their ears was also becoming clearer and more urgent. Soon, as a sharp beam of light pierced through the formation light, Showuk returned to everyone's side. His clothes were badly damaged, and there were several sword wounds on his face. There were also traces of burns on his wounds. Showuk's expression was very ugly, and there seemed to be a faint look of shock in his eyes. After a long time, he calmed down and looked at Saint Emperor Jiang and the others, saying, "The foundation of the formation is solid, and the power of the formation is stable. There won't be any chaotic explosions. You can experience it for yourselves, but there's one thing I need to remind you. Don't be too confident. Otherwise, you may not be able to come out." Everyone looked at each other. They may not be able to come out? Did that mean that they would have to stay in the formation forever? In layman's terms, it means that they will die. It's wonderful, Showuk said, and then patted Qin Hao on the shoulder and secretly said, "You're ruthless." Chapter 1906. There was no spirit inside the formation, but leader Wu Kei saw many strange scenes inside. This formation could change according to the cultivator's state of mind. Maybe it was because the incident in Sword City back then had left a deep impression on him, but he was actually reliving the old scenes and revisiting them. The ruins of the ancient city, the broken buildings, and the broken swords everywhere. When the scene appeared again, it was as if it was real. Showuk found himself in Sword City. In an instant, countless Emperor sword wills attacked him. Platinum sword shadows flew and intersected. The attacks were like rainbows and extremely fierce. Among them, some of the sword wills contained the yin-yang will of the Great Elder. Some of the sword chi formed a matrix and condensed into a powerful sword matrix of the Celestial Gate. Even Showuk's sword will of all things appeared. These sword wills would become stronger and stronger as the warrior resisted. He could even feel the power of heaven and earth from them. It was the terrain of the north that Feng Lan had poured into the matrix with the Dream Branch. And none of this was a problem for Showuk. He had reached the unblemished plane and had already surpassed himself. He faced the storm of swords calmly and calmly. Only the sword wills of the Flames of the Way in Sword City gave Swordmaster Zhen Ji a lot of trouble. Even someone as strong as Showuk's power of rules could not destroy the sword wills of the Flames. Through the collision of the wills of the Way, he found that the sword wills of the Flames of the Sword Wills were filled with supreme power. Ordinary rules and wills of the Way could not destroy it. It seemed to be a power of a higher level than the Way of the Emperor. Showuk knew that this was the will of the Way that Qin Hao had poured into the matrix. Moreover, it was very likely that it had been poured in through a divine item. There was only one word to describe it: ruthless. If even he could not destroy the will of the Way, one could imagine what would happen to Holy Emperor Jiang, Li Xiuxing, and the others if they encountered it. If they were careless, they could really lose their lives. Moreover, there were also Bao Hu Qianqiu, Su Qing, and the outstanding disciples of the 9 branches of the Phoenix Flower sect. Qin Hao could really do it. It can't be. Holy Emperor Jiang looked at the sword wounds on Shouwuk's face. He knew what Sword Master Zhen Ji was capable of, but he was still injured. He began to consider whether he should enter the formation and give it a try. Don't be scared by Wuk. I don't know what the array looks like at the moment, but its operation is always under the control of the Tao Ancestor and I. If there are any accidents or changes, we can pull you out at any time. Don't be nervous, Qin Hao said. Tempering was tempering. Naturally, he could not play with people to death or cripple them. Try your best. Don't give up until you can't hold on any longer. The Tao Ancestor advised everyone. After all, every obstacle was extremely precious for a martial artist to break through. Normally, Li Xiuxing, Ancestor treading sea, and the others would not encounter it. All right. Patriarch Li nodded. He glanced at the huge formation light covering the entire dojo, then stepped into it and disappeared from everyone's sight. I can't let old man Li look down on me. Holy Emperor Jiang also entered the formation. Let's go. Mu Yue grabbed Xiao Han's hand and followed along with Yun Ro. You guys just need to supervise. I'll go in and experience it as well. Feng Lan said solemnly. As the flower light lingered around her body, she also stepped into the formation light. Feng Lan's situation was the same as grandmother Feng Qi's. She had already touched the unblemished will but could not completely transform. Only with the power of Mengji could she display the strength of the Wei comparable to the true unblemished will in the North Territory. Now that she had the opportunity to improve her cultivation, she naturally did not want to miss it. Patriarch Li, Holy Emperor Jiang, Ancestor treading sea. Weiwei, Xiaohan, Yunro, and Phoenix Flower Sovereign, the first batch to enter the formation. Everyone outside the formation looked at the formation light floating, and they were all nervous and eager to make a move. The formation can still accommodate some people. Clan Master Su and the others don't want to go in and try? Qin Hao's mind sensed the fluctuation of the formation power. The formation of 4 unblemished great emperors was naturally not comparable to the 7 nirvanas of the Divine Palace, so it could only accommodate a limited number of people. Li Xiuxing and the others also had relatively high cultivation. About 10 more true selves would basically reach the limit of the formation power. Phoenix Flower Island Lords, please go first, Clan Master Su said with a smile. Clan Leader Su explained with a smile. They had come from the celestial gate of the Western world to help assemble the Matrix. As guests, it was not good for them to steal the limelight. Even though they wanted to go in, they had to first see what the Phoenix Flower Island Lords thought. 10 days is the limit. We will take turns to train in the formation. None of you will be missing. It doesn't matter who goes in first. Qin Hao set the rules and nodded to Clan Master Su. Very well, we will enter the formation first. The 3 clan masters of the Celestial Gate looked at each other and turned into 3 rays of light that disappeared into the formation. Suddenly, the formation light in the training hall became even more dazzling. Senior, I'll have to trouble you here. I will send a message to Peng Lai and let more people improve themselves, including Shi Dong and Qingqing. Qin Hao said softly. He had already told Zhang Guanghe to let the clansmen who stayed in western Liang and northern borderline to gather in the North Territory. Qin Dingtian, Tang Rong, Xiao Yi, Duan Zhanfei, Yilong Yuan, and Su Jin, who was cultivating in the Medicine Valley. Xiaogua and Yi Shuihan were currently in Peng Lai and would come with the Shua clan. This time, Qin Hao was going to cut off all means of retreat and fight with his back against the wall. You can go. Bo Changji took out an item from his sleeve and handed it to Qin Hao. He said, East Territory within the Devil Luo Empire. The divine Wudong tree will sense it and guide you to the Phoenix God clan. He had divined yesterday that the Phoenix God clan's habitat was hidden in the East Territory. As long as Qin Hao was careful to avoid the elites of the Daqin Empire, there would be no accidents along the way. Okay. Qin Hao put away the divine wudong tree. Do you want me to go with you? Showuk asked. Qin Hao crossing Daqin alone was not a small matter. No need. You should go back to the Sword Palace first. That is the most suitable place for you to practice your sword. The day I return will be the day I set foot on the Sunset Peak. Qin Hao patted Wuk's shoulder. Wuk's guess was right. The Juying Sword Emperor had successfully passed the tribulation and became a flawless Sword Emperor. This time, Qin Hao was looking for the Phoenix God clan and invited the Phoenix Patriarch. Once Jiang Wuk and the others broke through, even if one of them successfully broke through, 7 flawless Sword Emperors would be enough to fight with the War God Temple head-on. Thinking of this, Qin Hao was slightly excited. 600 years ago, his emperor body was destroyed in the God Burial Valley. He had been waiting for this day for too long. The truth of what happened back then was finally revealed. It depended on Zhan Wu's attitude and whether he would choose to announce it frankly or fight to the death. Pulling up the hood of his black robe, Qin Hao silently glanced at Bao. He wanted to say a few words, but he found that he was too powerless in front of his daughter. He took a step forward and directly broke through the air. He would come back and never let his daughter be alone again. Actually, he is quite concerned about you. Outside the training hall, Zhu Xing whispered in Bao Er's ear. When Qin Hao left, his gaze was full of fatherly love and faint helplessness, which made one's heart ache. Bao Er pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Wasn't that guy very afraid of outsiders? Wasn't he incomparably strict? Why didn't he dare to come over and rub her head boldly? Girl, do you want to follow me to the Sword Palace to practice swordsmanship? Wuk shouted in this direction. Immediately, many disciples of the Phoenix Flower sect looked over with admiration and envy. Practicing swordsmanship with an flawless Sword Emperor was comparable to practicing with Phoenix Flower supremacy. This opportunity was something that could be obtained easily. However, the disciples of the Phoenix Flower sect also understood that with their background, they couldn't enjoy the same treatment as Bao. After all, she was the little princess of the 9 lineages. No need. This girl's talent isn't in swordsmanship. She should cultivate with me. The Tao ancestor said. This. Countless disciples of the Phoenix Flower sect were stunned on the spot, including Hu Qianqiu and Su Qing. Another flawless Sword Emperor, and he was the Tao ancestor of the South, who had been famous for a long time. His qualifications were comparable to Grandmother Feng Qi. Do you know what I want to do now? A disciple of the Phoenix Flower sect said to the person beside him with a sullen face. What do you think? The person beside him asked. I want to exchange bodies with Senior Bao Er and replace her. Go back and dream on. Ha ha. Many disciples laughed. Showuk also shook his head and smiled. He bowed slightly to the Tao ancestor. Sorry to trouble you, Senior. I'll take my leave first. After speaking, his figure was wrapped in a beam of dazzling golden light. He pierced through the void and disappeared into the horizon. Girl, come here. Uncle Changji waved at Bao Er. Grandpa Tao ancestor. Bao Er did not dare to neglect. She hurried forward with a well-behaved and respectful attitude. Are you willing to cultivate with me? The Tao ancestor asked. Okay. Bao Er smiled shyly. The Tao ancestor, Uncle Changji, was a living legend of the South. He was an expert of an era. If the old man was willing to teach her, of course she would learn. Compared to Bao Er, you and I are as cheap as roadside stones. Su Qing sighed to Hu Qianqiu. He used to think that if Hu Qianqiu and Bao Er formed a good marriage, they would be well matched and would become a celestial couple in the eyes of the world. Now it seemed that Hu Qianqiu was not worthy. At the border of the Devil Luo Empire. Half a month later, Qin Hao, dressed in a black robe, successfully crossed the Daqin's territory and came to the Devil Luo territory. In order not to attract the attention of the Daqin experts, he had to hide his aura and disguise himself as an ordinary cultivator. This took a lot of time. At this moment, after he passed the checkpoint, he took out the divine parasol tree that the Tao ancestor gave him from the storage ring and walked forward. The divine parasol tree was the favorite divine tree of the Phoenix divine bird. The Phoenix divine clan had the blood of the Phoenix god flowing in their bodies, so they naturally liked the aura of the divine tree very much. The divine tree in Qin Hao's hand was engraved with the Tao array of the Tao ancestor, which could capture the aura of the phoenix and guide Qin Hao to find his senior sister's people. Why is there no reaction? The wudong tree that Qin Hao was holding was actually a small tree trunk. It had 3 branches and 2 leaves hanging from each branch. The Tao ancestor said that after entering the Devil Luo territory, he could rely on the parasol tree to find the direction of his senior sister's people. But now, the divine tree in Qin Hao's hand was not moving at all. Could it be that the Tao ancestors' array had failed? Maybe I'm too far away from the territory of the Phoenix clan, beyond the range of the parasol tree's senses. I have to continue searching. Qin Hao's gaze swept across the surroundings. The undulating mountain range brought back memories of the past. It seemed that back then, he had led the army into the Devil Luo Empire from here and finally killed those rebellious lords. Chapter 1907. During the Battle of Mount Xianlong, Zhuge Xiu was injured by the rules of the Xianlong holy man Qin Hao did not witness the battle, but he was sure that Zhuge Xiu's injury would not recover in a short time. With the intelligence of the divine war guards, the situation of Wu's cultivation should have been reported to Zhan Wu. Before he was fully prepared, the possibility of the 7 great commanders moving out was not high. Even if there was, Feng Hua, Mount Dao, and Peng Lai had already set up teleportation formations and could respond at any time. Among them, the Juying Sword Emperor was also a powerful helper. Qin Hao was relieved about the situation there. Zhan Wu can't figure out where I am. According to the East Continent cultivators, the Sunset Battle God rarely steps out of Sunset Peak. There must be a reason behind it. According to Qin Hao's understanding of Zhan Wu, whenever this happened in the past, Zhan Wu's cultivation would experience a huge leap. Could it be that he was in retreat? Could it be related to the Sunset Bow? I can't delay any longer. I have to find the Phoenix Grandmaster and return to Fenghua as soon as possible. Dusk was approaching. In the quiet and comfortable town, Qin Hao sat in a simple tea stall by the roadside. At this time, he put down the cup in his hand and held the divine parasol tree. His gaze was constantly looking at the distant sky. Sometimes, he lowered his head to look at the 3 branches growing on the divine parasol tree and frowned. More than 10 days had passed. From the time he set out until now, he had spent a whole month. He had searched all the secret realms and barren places in the All-Devil Empire, except for the All-Devil Empire's capital and a few famous big cities. In the end, the parasol tree did not respond. He did not find any clues. Did the Phoenix celestial tribe like to hide in the crowded big cities? Or maybe the Taoist ancestor made a mistake. It shouldn't be. Qin Hao's face was full of confusion. At this juncture, would the Taoist ancestor lie? Looking at the dark mountains, the Mo Luo Empire was actually not that big. Even if he suppressed his cultivation to the level of an emperor, his perception was not weakened. If the parasol tree in his hand had the slightest reaction, he could detect it in time. Qin Hao considered whether to contact Mo Xian secretly and ask the Mo Luo royal family to help investigate. No way. The more people there were, the more mouths there would be. The slightest bit of carelessness and his whereabouts would definitely be spread to the setting sun peak through the war god guards. That would result in serious consequences. The divine parasol tree in your hands is very valuable. There was a pile of broken bamboo baskets on the side of the tea shed, and a few rotten fruits were scattered on the ground. A swarm of flies was buzzing around, and a dirty beggar with disheveled hair was sitting next to him. The beggar pushed his bangs aside with both hands and looked at the divine parasol tree in Qin Hao's hand with a strange expression. There was a faint smile on his face. "You actually recognize this item?" Qin Hao's eyes flashed with a strange light. The wudong tree was not rare, but not every wudong tree could be called a divine tree. "If I can't recognize this thing, then wouldn't the old man, the grand phoenix ancestor, have an undeserved reputation?" The beggar laughed hoarsely at Qin Hao. "Ting!" Qin Hao gripped the divine parasol tree tightly and stood up from his seat. He looked at the beggar with a serious expression. The phoenix ancestor? Judging from the way he dressed, he did not have anything to do with the Phoenix God clan's ancestor at all. He might not be, but the beggar recognized the divine parasol tree. At this moment, Qin Hao was in a dilemma, and his eyes were filled with doubt. "Give it to me, and I'll let you leave safely. How about it?" The beggar spoke as if he was negotiating a deal with Qin Hao, but his tone was firm. Qin Hao quietly activated the 1,000-spirit fiery eyes, and traces of flame patterns appeared in his chakra eyes. He stared at the beggar, trying to see if he was real or fake. Strangely, not only could he not sense the beggar's cultivation level, but the 1,000-spirit fiery eyes could not see through him either. There were no traces of cultivation on him, and he looked like an ordinary person. He was also delirious, as if he had gone mad. "You want it?" Qin Hao handed over the divine parasol tree and said in a low voice, "Come and take it." "Okay." The beggar slowly stood up from the pile of bamboo baskets. He lowered his fluffy head and walked up step by step, reaching out to grab the divine parasol tree. Qin Hao flipped his palm and used the wood as a sword. When the beggar stretched out his hand, Qin Hao suddenly stabbed forward. In an instant, the piece of wudong tree bloomed with dazzling light. It was like a sharp sword light that pierced straight into the beggar's heart. "You're courting death." A low roar rang out from the beggar's throat. When he lifted his head, raging flames suddenly appeared on his body. Instantly, a fiery glow shot up into the sky, burning the sky of the town red. A boundless aura exploded forth, completely ignoring Qin Hao's attack and receiving it with his bare hands. Buzz! The other end of the divine parasol tree was firmly grabbed by someone. Qin Hao felt as if his body was being squeezed tightly. He could not help but be shocked and blurted out, "You're really from the Phoenix God clan." The surprise came too quickly. After searching for a month, Qin Hao unexpectedly met his senior sister's clansmen in this secluded town. The flames of Taoism on the beggar's body were indeed the phoenix flame. Moreover, this person's cultivation was not ordinary, having reached the peak of proving way. Although he was a bit weak and could not be the Phoenix Grand Ancestor, Qin Hao was still excited. "Let go," the beggar threatened. Streaks of blood climbed up to his eyes. He stared at Qin Hao with a faint murderous madness. "Friend, you and I are not enemies." Qin Hao did not have time to introduce himself, nor did he have time to say the name of monarch Qin Hao. The beggar's eyes flashed red, and his other hand slammed fiercely on Qin Hao's chest. Bang! This palm was extraordinarily heavy. It was far more powerful than what a proving way cultivator should have. When Qin Hao was hit, the qi and blood in his abdomen surged. He staggered backward, dragging the beggar with him. The realm of true self. Qin Hao was shocked. This beggar was a little unusual. Just now, there was no trace of cultivation at all. As soon as he made a move, he unleashed the strength of the peak of the doctrine realm, which had already surprised Qin Hao. However, within a breath, the pressure he released rose from the peak of the doctrine realm to the great emperor of true self. It seemed that this person's cultivation could change at will. Qin Hao had never seen such a situation. It was not deliberately hidden. There were not many people in the world who could deceive Denda's perception. Especially under the 10,000 spirit fire eyes, warriors could not hide their strength even if they wanted to. But this beggar could not see through the 10,000 spirit fire eyes. The only explanation was that this person's strength was connected to his mood. It was a unique talent. I told you to let go. A roar like a tiger's roar spread. The violent sound waves swept across a radius of hundreds of meters. Under the beggar's roar, the tea shed, tables, and chairs all flew into the sky and shattered into dust. The sound waves spread out, and countless houses collapsed. A fist light condensed with the divine flames of the phoenix slammed forward. At this time, the strength of the way that the beggar exploded with was no weaker than Holy Emperor Jiang. Qin Hao had no chance to explain, and he could not let the beggar continue. Although the will of the great Emperor of True Self was not as strong as an unblemished emperor, it had the ability to injure or even kill an unblemished emperor. There was a buzz. Qin Hao's body also tumbled with monstrous flames, flowing like red blood. He punched out with his left fist, and the fist wrapped in the will of the way collided heavily with the beggar. Rumble! A series of earth-shattering sonic booms rang out. The divine Wudong tree was shattered by the domineering flames of the way. Qin Hao's body leaned backward, and he felt a brief moment of dizziness. He felt a sharp pain in his left hand that he had not felt for a long time. His body continued to fly backward under the impact of gravity. The beggar's situation was not much better than Qin Hao's. His dirty body rolled on the ground and crashed through several houses. He rolled along the ground for a long distance before coming to a stop. But in the next second an even more violent aura shook the world. Seeing that the divine Wudong tree was destroyed, the beggar howled to the sky. At this moment, his eyes were completely occupied by the color of blood, and his emotions had fallen into an extreme rage. He stepped on the ground as if he was flying. With one step, he was dozens of feet away. His body flashed twice, and he was in front of Qin Hao. Accompanied by a sharp phoenix cry, a huge illusion of a phoenix descended on the beggar's body. He pulled his hand toward the sky, pulling out a dazzling sword aura, and slashed at Qin Hao. Stop, I am not an enemy of the Phoenix clan. The remaining half of the divine Wudong tree in Qin Hao's hand was burned to ashes. He quickly explained, but he realized that his explanation was unnecessary. At this moment, the beggar's aura had surpassed Holy Emperor Jiang and reached the level of Great Ancestor Ning Wu and Li Xiusheng. In desperation, Qin Hao formed a seal with his hands. The will of the Emperor resonated with the Great Path, and the power of the rules of meteorites flowed through his body. He blasted out balls of red lotus overlord fire like meteorite. Destroy! The red sword aura slashed through the void, mixed with madness and rage. The beggar's sword slashed down, and countless meteorites were destroyed. The sword aura slashed at the bottom of Qin Hao's feet. This! Qin Hao looked at the scorched sword mark beneath his feet. He used fleeting step to evade the attack, but the sword still managed to land on the sole of his feet. If he had moved another 3 inches forward, his shoes and toes would have been chopped off. Very strong. Not only was the beggar powerful, but the will of the Emperor was also strong. What was this thing? With the beggar's combat effectiveness, no one in the same realm could withstand it. Even the disciples of the Divine Palace would find it difficult to compete with him. At present, Li Xiusheng would definitely not be able to defeat this person. After all, not every perfected true self could split the flames of the rules released by Qin Hao's flawless power. He even doubted whether Zhuge Xiu, the weakest of the 3 commanders on Sunset Peak, could defeat this beggar. After all, the beggar was currently able to fight flawless perfected true self. Although Qin Hao did not use his true strength, it was enough to show how amazing this person's combat effectiveness was. Roar! Scales grew out and quickly covered the surface of Qin Hao's body. His figure gradually became majestic and tall in the bright light of the scales. In this battle, he would not use the great void sword or the indestructible law. If the power of two souls could not defeat the beggar, then Qin Hao could go back directly, so as not to embarrass himself in front of the Phoenix clan. Kill. The beggar's scarlet eyes were full of madness, and the anger in his aura became more and more intense. Along with this, the sense of pressure he exuded became heavier and heavier. He folded his hands and raised them above his head, slashing toward Qin Hao. Screech! The incomparably huge shadow of the phoenix spat out flames, rolling and spreading, as if everything was about to be burned. Chapter 1908. The beggar put his palms together and extended them forward. His aura was extremely ferocious. The shadow of the phoenix enveloped his body, and he spat out a beam of blazing flame from his mouth. Boom! The ground cracked open, and a majestic gully was created by the flame. It was like a flaming divine blade that rushed towards Qin Hao. Qin Hao stood in place, covered in scales. The tremors under his feet were very intense. A huge, flaming divine dragon circled around him. The flaming divine dragon spat out a dragon's breath as the fist light blasted forward. Suddenly, the breaths of the two ancient divine beasts collided. Waves of fire rose into the sky and turned into a terrifying storm that raged. Particles of phoenix divine flame permeated the air and penetrated the red lotus gang chi. They touched Qin Hao's dragon scales, and those scales began to melt. Qin Hao felt a piercing pain in his body. The strength of the beggar's phoenix flames was beyond his imagination. The flames could even penetrate his red lotus will of the way. In the past, only Qin Hao's opponents had experienced such a situation. Now it was happening to him. Bang! His fist, which was filled with the laws of meteorite, smashed heavily on the beggar's face. The ferocious force smashed the beggar's cheek, and the beggar's head was tilted to the side. His body was almost sent flying. Monstrous anger appeared in the beggar's eyes. His will of the way was controlled by his emotions. He forcibly stabilized himself and then punched Qin Hao in the stomach. A whirlpool-like fist force wreaked havoc, shattering a piece of dragon scales. Qin Hao felt a gush of bitter bile rising from his throat. He felt as if he had been hit by a battering ram, and his body was about to be pierced through. There is a limit to my patience. Qin Hao roared, and his eyes gradually turned scarlet. Affected by the power of the dragon, his emotions also had a hint of madness. It was as if the beggar hadn't heard him. He roared madly as boundless phoenix flames converged on his fists. He brandished a set of fist techniques that Qin Hao had never seen before. Fist after fist blasted out, causing space to shatter and deafening. An even more dazzling light flowed on Qin Hao's body. The increase in the power of the dragon's soul caused his desire to battle to rise again and again. 4 balls of golden light shot out from his fists and arms. With a hum, the aura of the Great Path swept out. The Mizar Battle Emperor's art was activated, and Qin Hao's punch broke through everything. Suddenly, the fist shadows that filled the sky were destroyed. The red lotus fire merged with the rules of the meteorite. With the support of Jean Dilly, the flames of the way condensed into a fist that was larger than a mountain. It directly sent the beggar flying. The phantom of the phoenix that enveloped him screeched again and again. It seems to be suppressed. Far away, in a corner of the town, many people were standing there to watch the battle. Among them, an elder with white hair and beard watched the battle and let out a slight cry of surprise. It's normal for him to be suppressed because his cultivation level is low. Surrounded by many figures, the dignified elder who was like a king among emperors spoke calmly. Standing in the crowd, he was taller than everyone else and had an oppressive aura. At this moment, Monarch Jingji was standing beside this tall and dignified elder. He had witnessed the mad ancestor being forced back by Qin Hao. A trace of surprise flashed across his face. Just now, the Grand Elder had said that the mad ancestor was suppressed by Qin Hao because his cultivation level was low. On the surface, it sounded normal, but Monarch Jingji didn't think so. Everyone present, including the old and young of the Phoenix gods, didn't think it was a derogatory remark. Being able to suppress the mad ancestor showed how powerful Qin Hao was. Even though his cultivation level was one level higher than the mad ancestor, they had never seen the Grand Elder suppress the furious mad ancestor. Not to mention the Grand Elder, even if there were any unblemished great emperors outside, the Phoenix gods present didn't think they could defeat the mad ancestor. "Can we ask them to stop now?" Monarch Jingji asked. He looked at the dignified elder beside him. The current Phoenix Grand Elder was the only strong cultivator in the entire East Continent who could make the Sunset Battle God look at him seriously. "Go," the Phoenix Grand Elder said faintly. He could tell that the mad ancestor wasn't a match for Qin Hao. Moreover, Qin Hao didn't seem to be using his full strength. As expected of the East Continent's Dendi. Today, he had seen that the rumors were true. Boom, 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 boom. In front of them, earth-shattering fist energies exploded continuously. As he circulated the 9-palace battle emperor art, Qin Hao's close combat strength was enhanced. At this moment, the mad beggar was trapped in Denda's storm-like attacks. He could only defend passively. His angry face was bruised and swollen, and many of his bones were broken. He couldn't hold on much longer. "Dendi, please stop." Monarch Jingji rushed into the battle and stopped him. One of Qin Hao's hands pressed down on the beggar's throat, firmly pressing him onto the ground. His other fist was just about to ruthlessly follow up with a few more punches. Regardless of whether this person was the Phoenix ancestor or not, just based on this crazy energy, if you don't subdue him, he won't stop. At this moment, Jing Ji's voice sounded. Qin Hao froze. He slowly turned his head and let out a sigh of relief. However, the hand on the mad beggar's throat still didn't loosen. "Mad ancestor, stop messing around." Jing Ji smiled apologetically at Qin Hao. She walked forward, ready to comfort the mad ancestor. Who would have thought that the Phoenix mad ancestor would stare at Jing Ji with bloodshot eyes and roar at her? The roar was as terrifying as a tiger's roar mixed with a wave of fire chi that heavily struck her body. As if struck by lightning, Jing Ji was heavily thrown back, smashing under the feet of everyone. A mouthful of vermilion blood splashed out. "Mad Tang!" the Phoenix Grand Elder shouted. He held something in his hand and shot it over. A red dot of light entered the mad ancestor's forehead. His bloodshot eyes gradually lost their color. The evil chi emitted from his body also started to dissipate. His emotions gradually calmed down. Phew! Qin Hao raised his hand to wipe the sweat off his forehead. The scales on his body melted into his flesh. Feeling that the person under his palm was no longer so violent, he slowly loosened his grip on the mad beggar's throat. Getting up, Qin Hao looked at the fallen monarch Jingji. "This throat injury wasn't light," he said. "I should have sensed that we were trapped in the barrier. The Phoenix God Clan's greeting is really special." He had searched all over the Luomo territory but couldn't find the Phoenix God Clan's territory. However, in this small town, he met the mad beggar who used the Phoenix Dao Flame. Moreover, the divine Wudong tree didn't seem to have done anything. This proved that the mad beggar had done it deliberately. He had the ability to block the divine Wudong tree's perception. Besides, what was this mad beggar's situation? Did he release him to test Denda's strength? The divine Wudong tree is gone. Mad Tang lay on the ground. When the color of blood faded from his eyes and his emotions calmed down, his eyes slowly became hollow. He mumbled in his sleep. "Jingji, bring the guest and the mad ancestor to Phoenix Tower Forest," said the Phoenix Grand Elder. The Phoenix clan ancestor said. After saying that, He disappeared from where he was, and the cry of a phoenix shot into the distance. Chapter 1909. Chan Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Chapter 1909. Divine Phoenix. Are you interested in the divine path? Phoenix Tower Forest. In the center of a lush ancient forest, there were 5 gigantic divine parasol trees. Their green trunks were dozens of feet tall, and their palm-shaped leaves were swaying in the wind. The yellowish-brown leaves were covered in a layer of golden flames, which were densely inlaid and dazzling. In particular, the one in the center of the 4 divine trees was the tallest and most spectacular. It was at least 300 meters tall, and its canopy stretched out like a giant umbrella that covered the sky. Its golden branches and leaves covered a whole quarter of the ancient forest, and spherical fruit cores fell from above, making people look up and gasp in amazement. Tang, his intellect is damaged, and he is easily angered. Moreover, his phoenix flames can increase with his anger, and his murderous nature is astonishing. The only thing in the clan that can calm him down is this parasol tree stamen. The phoenix ancestor sat cross-legged on the huge divine parasol tree in the center like an immortal picking flowers. He reached out and plucked a pink stamen from the side. Then, he pricked his finger, and his blood merged with the stamen. The pink stamen became even redder. He flicked his finger, and a red dot slowly flew down to Crazed Tang's forehead and entered between his eyebrows. Qin Hao looked at Crazed Tang, who was fiddling with the soil like a child and burying the parasol tree seeds in the soil. As the phoenix ancestor's blood entered between his eyebrows, Crazed Tang's murderous aura dissipated slightly. His intellect was damaged, he had no sense of pain, he was easily angered, and his Tao flames could increase his Tao power in anger. Who would have thought that a person who looked stupid on the surface would be as murderous as a flawless heavenly emperor once he went crazy? There were no rules, or perhaps it was better to say that his anger was the power of his rules. It couldn't harm others and would instead harm Crazed Tang himself. According to the Phoenix ancestor, if Crazed Tang was allowed to rage endlessly, he would eventually be incinerated by his own phoenix flames. This was really Qin Hao thought of a sentence at this moment. The heavens were fair. When they gave you a certain ability, they would also take away another precious existence. This sentence was the most realistic portrayal of Crazed Tang. Crazed Tang's Tao flame was stronger than all the other members of the Phoenix God clan, and it could continue to increase with his anger. In the end, it would reach a level that even the Phoenix Patriarch didn't dare to imagine. At the same time, the heavenly Tao deprived his brother of his intelligence and sense of pain. Because it didn't feel pain, it was even more violent. As a descendant of the Phoenix God clan, why would he need to hide and be isolated from the world? Since he was part of the God clan, he should shine with the light of the God clan and be worshipped by the world. There were many things that Qin Hao could do for the Phoenix God clan. Moreover, they also needed more resources. Hiding in this ancient forest within the boundary would only make them unable to move forward. Over time, their talent would gradually deteriorate. 10,000 years later, could they still be part of the God clan? There's no need. The Phoenix ancestor said. He understood what Dendi was saying. The world was chaotic, especially after the opening of the burial god ruins. Emperor's possessions and divine possessions appeared one after another. Once the Phoenix God clan followed Dendi into the world, they would become bones without success. In comparison, it was more appropriate to live and work peacefully in the boundary forest. Senior, don't you have any ambition in your heart? Qin Hao said unwillingly. Of course I do, but ambition is not something that can be exchanged with life. The Phoenix ancestor couldn't afford to gamble, nor did he want to gamble. How could Dendi make the Phoenix God clan work for him with just a few words? Just for the incomplete life feather in Qin Hao's hand? It wasn't worth it. Phew. Qin Hao sighed and looked at the phoenix ancestor on the parasol tree. Was he really unwilling to come out? As expected, he was overconfident. Senior sister wasn't here. He and Jingji were just strangers. Why would she help him? If you come as a guest, the God clan welcomes Dendi. Other than that, we can't help you. If you still don't give up and want to scheme against us, then you can go back. Jingji, see the guest out, the phoenix ancestor said. Sorry, you go back, Jingji said helplessly. Jingji said helplessly. She stretched out her hand to lead the way for Qin Hao. That year, in the deep abyss of the Valley of the Gods, Qin Hao had snatched the flames of the way from the divine tree from Zhang Yan and gifted it to his son, Luolan. After that, Luolan had refined the flames of the way and his abilities had indeed increased significantly. However, he could not risk the lives of his entire clan just because of this. Wasn't the sacrifice a little too big? My relationship with the Phoenix God clan is not as simple as you think, but I won't force you. If you need anything, you can send someone to the North Territory Phoenix Flower at any time. I'm willing to help as long as it's within my power. Goodbye, Qin Hao said with a fist salute. He, Muri, Eastern Sky, and Zhang Yu were real siblings. If his senior brothers and senior sisters were alive, he wouldn't have to waste his breath. Unfortunately. That's right. Qin Hao suddenly turned around and looked at the Phoenix ancestor. I see that you have completed the unblemished realm and are close to the Nirvana realm.